Greek adventures and find your home at sea. We'll also send you packing with these luxury travel gifts. For a chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 26th of April. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
A very good afternoon to you and a happy Friday. It's 3 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News, broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster, all across the UK. Today, I'll have a GB News exclusive on the honey trap scandal that shocked Westminster, and I'll bring you some of the messages that were sent by one of those people responsible. Next up, 29 million of us will benefit from tomorrow's record-breaking cut in national insurance. And I'll ask our economics and business editor, Liam Halligan, if it's good news or if Labour are right to call it a Tory tax con. Next up, there's fantastic news about the King. He's due to visit Australia in October as planned, and apparently he's raring to go. And that's all coming up between now and 6 o'clock. Well, to the show, always an absolute pleasure to have your company. I want to hear what you've got to say about the big stories of the day. The honey trap sexting scandal. Are the MPs really victims of their own stupidity? Let me know what you think on that. Plus, at 4 o'clock in around about an hour's time, there's yet another pro-Palestine march planned for Parliament Square. Right outside the studio here, we'll have a reporter on the front line. It's the last Friday of Ramadan. This march, the Qud March as it's called, started in Iran in 1979, happens every year. This year, 500 additional police officers are currently deployed out there. There's a pro-Israel demo planned as well at Parliament Square. That should get interesting. Is it time to ban these marches? There's one tomorrow as well. There seems to be more marches than we've had hot dinners. Get in touch all the usual ways, gbviews@gbnews.com. But first, let's kick off your show with your latest news headlines with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Martin. Good afternoon. 2 minutes past 3, our top stories this hour. Human remains have been found wrapped in plastic at a nature reserve in Salford. Greater Manchester Police says that a murder investigation has been launched following the discovery by a member of the public at Kersall Dale. Now, you can see live pictures here if you're watching on television from Salford, where we're expecting an update from the force shortly. This is a developing story. We'll bring you more on this as we get it. Now, government security experts have been called in to analyse the WhatsApp messages at the heart of the Westminster sext scandal. So far, around a dozen MPs, staff and journalists are known to have been targeted, and sources have told GB News that more are coming forward. Now, all that's after Tory MP William Ragg told The Times that he'd sent intimate pictures of himself to someone on a gay dating app and was then manipulated into providing phone numbers. He's now expected to be contacted today and will be asked for a list of the numbers that he shared. The Met Police has also confirmed that it's working with other forces over blackmail concerns. Chancellor Jeremy Hunt says that everyone needs to take cybersecurity seriously.
I think the events of the last few days have been a great cause for concern. The MP involved has given a courageous and fulsome apology, but the lesson here for all MPs is that they need to be very careful about cybersecurity. And indeed, it's the lesson for members of the public as well, because this is something that we are all having to face in our daily lives.
Millions of people will receive a boost in take-home pay from tomorrow, following a cut to employee national insurance. From the start of the new tax year, Class 1 contributions will be reduced from 10 to 8%. Meanwhile, a further 2 million self-employed people will see their Class 4 national insurance reduced from 8 to 6%. The government says around 29 million workers will benefit from these changes. However, Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves says taxes are actually going up.
Say tomorrow that taxes are going down, all of the numbers show that taxes are on the rise. Taxes today are at a 70-year high, and they're due to increase in every single year of the forecast period. In fact, by the end of the forecast, the average British family would be paying £870 more in tax because of the frozen national insurance and income tax threshold, and because of increases in council tax too. That is the Conservatives' double whammy on tax.
Consultants have accepted a pay offer from the government ending a year-long dispute. The British Medical Association says 83% of its members in England voted in favour of the deal, which is an improvement on one they rejected earlier on this year. Consultants have taken strike action over the past 12 months, adding to the NHS waiting list, which has also been affected by the junior doctors' dispute, which remains unresolved. ASLEF has accused the government of being, quote, economically incompetent as train drivers continue their strikes over pay. Union members have walked out and mounted picket lines across the country. 5 train operators, including Avanti, Cross Country and West Midlands Railway, are not running any services today. A ban on overtime at 16 companies is also continuing into tomorrow. ASLEF's General Secretary Mick Whelan says workers need a resolution.
You want somebody to come to the table and resolve this issue. The people behind me haven't had a pay rise for 5 years, half a decade. In the cost of living crisis, we're the same as any other worker. Regardless of what you earn, you feel that you have a right to demand a pay rise when you've got an economically incompetent government.
New powers to prevent disruptive protests come into force today, with offenders facing up to 6 months in prison or an unlimited fine. Serious disruption prevention orders can be used to stop repeat offenders from joining protest groups in a particular area at particular times. Home Secretary James Cleverly says these powers target those who are, quote, dedicated to wreaking havoc. However, civil liberties organisation Liberty has described it as a shameless attempt to prevent people from being able to make their voices heard. The Israeli military has dismissed 2 officers over the drone strikes which killed 7 aid workers on Monday, including 3 Brits. John Chapman, James Henderson and James Kirby were among the World Central Kitchen workers who died. US President Joe Biden has warned Israel that future support for the country depends on the steps taken to protect civilians and aid workers. Israel has since announced that it's opening new routes for humanitarian aid deliveries into Gaza, with the Erez crossing opening for the first time since the Hamas attacks in October. Thames Water's holding company has defaulted on some of its debts. Kemble Water Finance Limited was unable to meet an interest payment deadline. The firm is now urging lenders who hold around £400 million worth of company bonds not to take creditor action while they look at repayment options. It comes after Thames Water investors pulled out £500 million worth of funding, worsening its financial position. The King has reportedly told aides to ramp up plans for a 2-week state visit to Australia. King Charles is said to be over the moon and raring to go after his cancer treatment started positively. The 75-year-old is said to be feeling optimistic after he was able to meet members of the public on Easter Sunday. He reportedly told aides that he's supercharging plans to also visit New Zealand and Samoa. Well, for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code. It's on your screen right now, or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now, back to Martin.
Thank you very much, Ray. Now, we start with the honey trap sexting scandal that has shocked and rocked Parliament and the rest of the country. Now, we understand that well over a dozen figures in Westminster have been targeted, and Tory MP William Wragg has apologised after he said he was manipulated into giving the personal phone numbers of colleagues to a man he met on a gay dating app. And GB News has today been given exclusive access to some of those messages. And a message will be sent by someone pretending to have known the recipient. In this instance, a person claiming to be called Charlie said, "Was sad not to bump into you over conference season. It's been too long." And this was then followed up by the flirtatious message, do I need to do something better to grab your attention? GB News understands messages were sent over a period spanning a period of 5 months. And here, GB News viewers can see persistent messages from the same telephone number. Well, senior figures from both major parties have spoken about the scandal today. And in a moment, we'll hear from Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves, what she had to say. But first, here's the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt.
Well, I think the events of the last few days have been a great cause for concern. The MP involved has given a courageous and fulsome apology, but the lesson here for all MPs is that they need to be very careful about cyber security, and indeed it's the lesson for members of the public as well, because this is something that we are all having to face in our daily lives.
Incredibly concerning, the revelations that we've heard overnight. The police are now looking into this. That is right, and the police investigation should be able to take its course.
But what do you want to see happen to Wragg? Should he resign?
Well, that's a question for the Conservatives. The police investigation is now underway, and it is right that we allow that investigation to take its course.
I get you don't want to talk about Wragg specifically, but how concerned are you in general about the vulnerability of MPs to blackmail?
Well, I'm very concerned about what seems to have happened in this incident, especially about MPs' telephone numbers being passed on to unknown sources. That is really concerning, and that is right that there is a proper investigation into this. In positions of responsibility, we always have to think about our actions, but there are also malevolent players out there who are trying to influence politics in these benign ways.
Well, two very different responses from both of the major parties there, and I'm joined in our studio in Westminster by our political editor, Chris Hope, to discuss this. Chris, courageous and fulsome, or naive and stupid? Now, I tell my kids who are 10 and 14, never, ever put a compromising image of yourself on the internet because it will get out. How can those who are elected, who are meant to be bigger and better and smarter than us, fall into such a stupid trap?
William Wragg might admit to both those charges, courageous and fulsome, and naive and stupid. He said overnight to the Times, he's not commenting to GB News today, they had compromising things on me, they wouldn't leave me alone. I've hurt people by being weak. I was scared. I'm mortified. I'm so sorry. My weakness has caused other people hurt. He's clearly thinking, I'm so sorry. They got me in a weak moment. We know about he's had mental health issues in the past. Gloria De Piero, our colleague, has interviewed him about them. He's been open about them. Anyone doing a search of the internet would see this individual under pressure, could be put into a place where he just doesn't want to be. Others are saying, and maybe you might agree with this, why on earth did he give out, at least maybe a dozen, more than that, numbers of friends, colleagues, MPs, journalists to these people who then were targeted. Two of the MPs returned fire with images of themselves, pretty explicit ones. So why didn't William Wragg admit he was under pressure and go through authorities? Instead, he shopped other people to these to the people putting pressure on him. Difficult for him. Two police forces investigating, Leicestershire Police, the Met Police. Security experts from government, they're worried about it. Speculation, could it be a foreign actor, Chinese, Russian hackers trying to get something on our MPs? Letter from Lindsay Hoyle last night to MPs saying that they are working closely with partners in government to analyse and understand the nature of these messages and security risk. They can't speculate at this stage. More coming in as we speak. Senior sources say to me that the fact that this is out there, a lot of people are now looking through their WhatsApps and seeing if they've been targeted.
Do you think there's a cultural issue? We've heard in the past about sexual harassment and that culture in Westminster. We know there's a drink culture in Westminster. These conversations have been had. Is there another thing to discuss, and that's the empty hours? You're on your own in a place, you're powerful, that's an aphrodisiac, you're bored. Yeah. It makes you particularly vulnerable to this kind of fishing. Maybe
for men. Yeah. Let's be honest about it. I think men often shed friends as they get older. If they're married, have a long-term partner, they kind of just let friends go. They're more solitary in their 50s and 60s. I think that can happen, and they can be targeted, particularly if they're a long way from home. William Wragg is a gay man. I don't know how he's got a partner, but his seat is Hazel Grove in Greater Manchester, where he is at the moment, a long way from Westminster. All these MPs, they come down here, particularly men, on their own, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, back Thursday, 3 nights alone. And men aren't so good on their own, I think, in my experience. I think they need a partner with them to just keep it all balanced and stop them, going out of control. I think that can be a concern. And I think that's why, particularly for men, we see marriages breaking down in Westminster all too often.
OK. Well, I'm joined now by GBNews' senior political commentator, Nigel Nelson. Nigel, welcome to the show. I think whichever way you dress this up, Nigel, it's a sorry affair. But I've been very interested in the two quite different responses from the parties. Jeremy Hunt saying courageous and fulsome. Rachel Reeves saying, not saying that William Wragg shouldn't resign. A bit more hard line in her approach. What's your take on this sorry affair?
I think what both Rachel Reeves and Jeremy Hunt were showing is there's quite a bit of sympathy in Westminster for William Wragg, that he's fessed up to his own stupidity, and along with that, facing the public humiliation that entails. So he clearly feels absolutely wretched now for what he has done. The more serious question, obviously, is who is behind this and the kind of security risk that Parliament's facing.
And Nigel, you know William Wragg quite well. I mean, do you think he means it when he says how mortified he is? And were you surprised by the different responses there from Jeremy Hunt and from Rachel Reeves? Jeremy Hunt, an arm round a Tory colleague. Rachel Reeves saying it's up to the Tories if he loses the whip or not.
I think that the interesting thing from Rachel Reeves was that she didn't say that he should lose the whip. She didn't say that he ought to resign as an MP. Obviously, those things, the second one is a matter between William Wragg and his conscience, and also what his colleagues feel about the betrayal they've suffered at his hands. As you said, Chris, that it's well known that William Wragg has some mental health issues. I think that people feel they don't want to push him too far. And yes, I do believe the fact that he must feel absolutely dreadful at the moment. What he did was incredibly stupid, and it's awful that he actually passed over numbers of other people when he was under pressure. But I think that the general view seems to be that maybe now it's all come out, he's been punished enough.
Nigel, what do you think it says about the mindset of the elected representatives of the country that they're making slips that your average teenager is taught is a terrible thing to do? Putting photographs of yourself on the internet, something I tell my children who are 10 and 14, is a terrible thing to do. Parliamentarians should be held to higher standards than the rest of us. Do you think that's possible, or are they simply they have too much time on their hands, there's too much opportunity, too much temptation?
You're absolutely right, Martin, that parliamentarians should know better. They know that their targets either are blackmailers or the Russian or Chinese security services. So you'd think that they would know not to get involved in this. But it's a lesson to everyone. I mean, the one thing that no one should do is put intimate pictures out there when you don't know what might happen to them after that. MPs should know that better than most people. But, I mean, Chris made the point that one of the problems about Parliament is that MPs do have a lot of sort of downtime on their hands, that they can't go home, or many of them can't go home because their constituencies are so far away. So there's a lot of sort of empty time they've got, and they try and do something to fill it. You've also got the adrenaline that's rushing around by being in Westminster. It is a very sort of high-octane job. And also politicians do tend to be risk takers, otherwise they wouldn't go into the business in the first place.
OK, Nigel Nelson, thank you very much for joining us on the show. And Chris Hope, always a pleasure. Now, get in touch, your views on that. Do you think they are a victim of an elaborate scam or merely victims of their own stupidity? Get in touch, gbviews@gbnews.com. Now, at 4 o'clock, I'll speak to a former Conservative MP who actually quit Parliament after his own scandal a couple of years ago to get his take on this saga. And there's plenty of coverage on our website, gbnews.com, and you've helped to make it the fastest growing national news website in the country. So thank you very much. Now, it's our biggest giveaway of the year so far, and your chance to win a £10,000 Greek cruise for two, 10 grand in cold, hard, tax-free cash, and a whole host of luxury travel gifts on top. Yes, your 2025 holiday could be on us here at GB News, and here's all the details that you need to get your mitts on the lot of it.
You could win our biggest prize giveaway so far. First, there's an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. Plus, courtesy of Variety Cruises, a bespoke 7-night small boat cruise for two worth £10,000. With flights, meals, excursions and drinks included, your next holiday could be on us. Choose any one of their 2025 Greek adventures and find your home at sea. We'll also send you packing with these luxury travel gifts. For a chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 26th of April. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Get stuck in now. 29 million workers will benefit from the biggest ever cuts to national insurance as of from tomorrow. But Labour says it's simply a Tory tax con. Well, they would do, wouldn't they? I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel. First one of the day.
Dubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
You think this country needs new gas power stations? Apparently, this will all be about trying to get some form of energy security. Rishi Sunak has upset people today with this suggestion, people saying that actually this would do more damage to climate change than it would do good. Where are you on it, Richard?
I'll tell you exactly where. We need a lot more gas power stations and nuclear power stations because quite often the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine. Last week, we imported 16% of all our electricity because we haven't got enough capacity in the UK, and we're now totally over-reliant on renewables.
The part of the problem is the lack of storage capacity, which the government has finally got round to addressing. I think this as backup is actually quite a sensible idea. But they are not doing anything, as far as I can tell. At the moment, it will be retrofitted to have storage capability, which seems to be utterly bonkers. I mean, anyone who's got solar panels, you know very well you're storing up energy. So it's about storage as much as production. They could have gone, 20 years ago, we could have had nuclear power. We could have done more. We haven't looked far enough ahead in the future, and we are in grave danger of making the same mistake. I mean, the other side of this is, what is the difference going to be? Blackouts are, they're irritating and...
Irritating? It'd be disastrous. It would literally destroy our economy.
Well, they would be now, but, some of us remember 3-day weeks and things like that. And in fact, I grew up thinking that everybody had, at least a couple of days a week when they had to eat off a primer stove and things.
This is, again, I don't want to harp on, but this is one of the problems in the politics in our country, isn't it? So many politicians, they just think in election cycles. Absolutely. They just think, what can I do and say to get my own backside re-elected at the next general election? They're not always looking ahead at, actually, politics aside, what is genuinely the best thing for this country.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, it's 3:24. I'm Martin Daubney and this is GB News. Now, later in the show, I'll talk about the new report that claims United Ireland could cost Dublin more than £17 billion a year, every year, for 2 decades. But before that, millions of workers will see a cut in their national insurance rate from tomorrow, which could help ease some financial strain on household budgets. But with high inflation and stubborn interest rates, does this go far enough? Well, GB News has been out and about, finding out what this means for you.
There's nothing wrong with having a little bit more money, less taxes. I'm happy with that. Didn't know it was happening, but thank you.
I think that's great for everyone, especially with the rising costs with everything financially. Everyone's struggling at the moment, so yeah.
I think it's great for young people like myself. Yeah, I think it's going to be really good news.
In a good way, it's good, but in another way, people don't care about that. I don't think it's all the bills and stuff what they mainly think about in the rent. So it's they're the main priorities.
Well, a mixed bag on the streets, and I'm joined now by Liam Halligan, GB News' economics and business editor, who we're with On the Money. Liam, always a delight to have you in the studio. £900 a year, not to be sniffed at, but will it be wiped out by your old friend, fiscal drag?
Fiscal drag, crikey. Just think, a year ago, most of the British public didn't know what fiscal drag was. Now, most of the British public don't know what fiscal drag is, but slightly fewer than before. So what's happening today is that the Chancellor is very keen to stress that he and the Conservative Party have actually cut taxes twice in the last few months. In January, they introduced a cut to the headline rate of employer national insurance, down from 12% to 10%. That headline rate is going down from 10% to 8% now in April. If you take those two things together, that's about £900 off the tax bill of the average worker. Having said that, the tax burden is at a 70-year high. That's because tax thresholds have been frozen from 2021 to 2028, and that is what's putting that tax burden at that 70-year high. Tax burden is, of course...
I'm afraid we have to cross to a press conference in Salford about the body that's been found.
You are. Yeah, OK. You're all ready? Yeah.
OK, good afternoon everybody. My name is Chief Superintendent Tony Creeley and I'm the District Commander for the Salford Division in Greater Manchester Police. We're investigating the discovery of human remains that were found by passers-by here at Kersal Wetlands yesterday evening. We do not know the identity of the person or whether they are male or female. We do know though that these remains are human and it would not be possible for them to have survived. From forensic inquiries so far, we believe that these remains are likely to have been here for a matter of days, and it really is a tragic case. Our priority now is establishing who this person is and ensuring that we carry out a diligent and respectful investigation on behalf of that person and their family, whoever they may be. You will understand there are a number of inquiries for us to carry out in the area of Kersal, and our specialist officers and forensic teams will be here for some time to ensure work is thoroughly investigated. We know this will be concerning for people in the local area, and we ask anyone with concerns or any information whatsoever to speak to uniformed officers who will be in the area for a number of days. In the meantime, we have a team of detectives in our major incident team, supported by local detectives from Salford District, to carry out various lines of inquiry. We are speaking to those locals in the area, dog walkers, passers-by, or anyone else who may have the smallest bit of information. We need to make a breakthrough in this case, and we urge anyone with any information whatsoever to contact the police without delay. These are very early stages in what is a murder investigation and is a tragic case. We are keeping an open mind and we do all that we can to establish the circumstances and provide answers as soon as we can. Thank you.
OK, so that was a press announcement by the police there in Salford confirming human remains have been found on Kersal Dale near Salford. The police are making clear they do not know yet the identity of the body, don't even know if it is male or female, but definitely are human remains. They have been there for a matter of days. This is now being treated as a murder inquiry. The remains were found by a passerby who happened upon them. They're calling for dog walkers, anybody in the area who uses the area regularly, to get in touch. This is now a full-scale murder investigation. They need to make a breakthrough, but as yet, just to confirm, they do not know the identity of the body parts. They interestingly specified the person couldn't have survived. So that implies what about the body parts that will come out in the fullness of time. Don't know if the body is male or female, but they definitely are human. Been there, as I say, a matter of days, so relatively recent murder. That's what they said. They are treating this as a murder inquiry. The body parts found by passers-by, and the police in Salford putting a call out for anybody who uses the area, Kersal Dale, a nature reserve near Salford, to get in touch with any evidence, no matter how scant they may believe it may be. They need to make a breakthrough, the police said, early days of what is now being treated as a murder investigation. Well, there's lots more still to come between now and 4 o'clock, and I'll speak to a weather expert as the country braces itself for winds of up to 70 miles an hour this weekend. There's another storm coming, Storm Kathleen. We're going to need a bigger alphabet. But first, your latest news headlines with Ray Edison.
Thanks, Martin. 3:31, our top stories this hour. Government security experts have been called in to analyse WhatsApp messages at the heart of the Westminster sext scandal. So far, around a dozen MPs, staff and journalists are known to have been targeted, and sources have told GB News that more are coming forward. It's after Tory MP William Wragg told The Times that he sent intimate pictures of himself to someone on a gay dating app and was then manipulated into providing the contacts. Now, he's expected to be contacted today and will be asked for the list of numbers which he shared. The Met Police has also confirmed that it's working with other forces over blackmail concerns. Consultants have accepted a pay offer from the government ending a year-long dispute. The British Medical Association says 83% of members in England voted in favour of the offer, which is an improvement on one rejected earlier on this year. Consultants have been striking over the past 12 months, adding to the NHS waiting list, which has also been affected by the junior doctors' dispute, which remains unresolved. Millions of people will receive a boost in take-home pay from tomorrow following a cut to employee national insurance. From the start of the new tax year, Class 1 contributions will be reduced from 10 to 8%. Meanwhile, a further 2 million self-employed people will see their Class 4 national insurance reduced from 8 to 6%. The government says around 29 million workers will benefit from these changes. Well, for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
For stunning gold and silver coins you'll always value, Rosland Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
In today's markets, the pound will buy you $1.2606 and €1.1661 euros. Price of gold is £1,827 and 37 pence. That's per ounce. And the FTSE 100's at 7,897 points.
Rosland Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thank you, Ray. Now, a pro-Palestine protest is taking place in London this afternoon. In fact, it kicks off in about half an hour's time, and it's due to go right past a pro-Israel demonstration that's happening outside the Houses of Parliament. We're going to cross live to central London to make sure we cover that from the front line, live and direct. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm John Vincent. Long delays on the M6 southbound in Cumbria between junction 36 Kirkby Lonsdale and 34 for Lancaster. Also got long delays on the M5 northbound. Firstly, in the West Midlands, there's a lane closed for an accident just after junction 2 for Albury. We're also seeing queues on the opposite carriageway due to onlookers. Then on the M5 northbound in Somerset, it's partially blocked due to an accident between junction 26 Wellington and 25 Taunton. And still on the M5 northbound, there's queues in Devon. That's due to an earlier accident at junction 31, the Oakhampton turnoff. In Kent, we've got queues on the M25 anti-clockwise stop-start, actually at the Dartford tunnels. Estimated travel time 40 minutes. And long delays on the M25 in both directions at junction 28, the Brook Street roundabout. That's due to a traffic light failure. And that's the latest travel news.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
I'm Mark Dolan and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mark Dolan Tonight, weekends from 9 p.m.
We've got a problem in this country and it smells like you-know-what, because it is you-know-what. It's all throughout our waterways. They're absolutely full of it. You'd think in the 6th richest nation you could manage basic sanitation, but in 2024 in the UK, you'd be wrong. And it's so bad that this weekend's boat race was affected by the amount of E. coli in the Thames. I know what you're thinking. When will these kids who go to Oxford and Cambridge universities get a break in life? But it is an embarrassment. We can't hold an event on our rivers now. The rowers were given safety advice before the race that they should avoid getting any splashed water in their mouths during a rowing race. You might as well tell them to try not to rush. Leonard Jenkins of the Oxford men's team said it would be a lot nicer if there wasn't as much poo in the water. How terrible that that needs to be said. The only time that would be worse is if you read that in a TripAdvisor review of a cafe. On Wednesday, Environment Agency figures revealed raw sewage spills doubled last year in England to 3.6 million hours of spills, compared with 1.75 million hours in 2022. I was shocked that it happens so much we have to measure poos by the hour. To put that in context that you might understand, an hour of poo is about 30 trips for a woman and about 2 for a man. This is because our water systems get overwhelmed when they get a lot of rain. Hello, have you met the UK before? Rain is pretty much our thing. Sewage is spilled into the waterways to prevent the system backing up. In a statement issued before the race, Thames Water said, "We have experienced higher than average long-term rainfall across London." Yeah, how can you have higher than average long-term rainfall? If it's long-term, it increases the average. Do the math, step up and learn to cope with it.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Welcome back. 3:38 is your time. I'm Martin Daubney and this is GB News. Now, later in the show, I'll get reaction to some great news about King Charles because he's due to visit Australia in October and apparently he's raring to go. Now, a few minutes ago, we'd heard from the police in Salford after human remains were found at a nature reserve there. And they were called to the scene after a member of the public found what has been described as an unknown item wrapped in plastic. I'm joined now by our North West of England reporter, Sophie Reefer. Sophie, what do we know so far? Dramatic developments.
Well, we know that a major investigation is now underway. Just to the left here, we can see police carrying out that investigation, trying to find out more after the reports came in last night of a body part wrapped in plastic. Now, we heard just moments ago from Tony Creeley, the Chief Superintendent. He gave a press conference, which we heard here on GB News. We heard that they were investigating that discovery made by passers-by. We also heard that they don't know at this stage yet whether it was male or female, but they do know enough to know that it wasn't possible for the victim to survive. He also confirmed that these remains, they're not historical remains. They have been here, in fact, for a matter of days. He said the next line of this is to try and now establish who this person is, describing it, of course, as a tragic incident. He said it's also a major incident, so officers now from the Major Incident Department will work alongside local officers here in Salford. There is also already a major police presence here on site as they try to uncover any more information that may try and help them. Now, after the cameras stopped rolling, they then gave a little bit more information to the press, which we can share with you. They told us they're confident that it isn't a child that has been found and that the post-mortem this afternoon, they can reveal to us that it is a major body part that has been found. They're able to tell us whether there are any distinctive features or anything of that ilk, but that there is an ongoing search for further body parts in the area to try and help police piece together exactly what may have happened here. I actually asked if anyone had come forward so far. Of course, police have put out that appeal to members of the public, anyone, dog walkers or anyone in the local area who may know something, and he told me that in fact no one has come forward so far, that no arrests have been made, but he did instill into all of the press that this investigation is still in the very early stages here in Salford.
Okay, Sophie Reefer, thank you very much for that update from Salford, the nature reserve there, the Kersaldale Nature Reserve, where human remains were found earlier. And to confirm, the police do not yet know the identity of the body, nor if it is indeed male or female, but confirmed there by Sophie Reefer, these are not the remains of a child. A major body part, so not an entire body found. We'll have more on that, of course, throughout the show as we find out more. Now, I'll have much more coming in the show later on, including Storm Kathleen is due to batter the country. Is it just me, or are we being battered by more storms than ever? We'll speak to Nathan Rao, a weather expert. Storm Kathleen, we're already at K. If we're not careful, we're going to be going round and round the roundabout, the alphabet, beg your pardon, aren't we? Now, don't forget, we're going to cross live to a demo later on at Parliament Square, a pro-Palestine protest, yet another one, due it's the last Friday of Ramadan. A pro-Israel demo is also taking place at Parliament Square. Could there be a confrontation? Well, we'll be covering live from the front line on GB News. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. Well, Storm Kathleen is on the way for this weekend, but it will be turning much warmer than it has been lately. The winds will also pick up. Here is Storm Kathleen developing out to the west of the UK. Ahead of that, we have got a weather front across northern areas. That's brought some snow earlier today. That's much turning to rain now as the temperatures start to pick up through the rest of the evening. Temperatures will rise as well from the southwest through the night, so it's going to be a very mild night, but there will be some very heavy rain for parts of Northern Ireland, much of Scotland as well for a time. Much of the rain should clear through by tomorrow morning, though, to leave a fairly dry start for the bulk of England and Wales. And as I said, it will be a very mild start to the day. Those temperatures are closer to the daytime average for this time of year. Throughout the day, across eastern areas of England, southeastern areas of Scotland, it should stay largely dry through the day. But Storm Kathleen is developing. It will push up to the west of the UK. There are wind warnings in force. There's likely to be some delays to travel across western areas of England, Wales and Scotland, as well as Northern Ireland, some large waves as well. But in the east, where it stays fairly dry, there'll be highs of 22 degrees. Sunday's going to be another fairly mild day, but it will be more in the way of showers, particularly across western areas, Wales, northwestern England in particular, seeing some of those heavier showers, and it's going to stay windy in the far north. Next week, it does look like it's going to turn a little bit drier across southern areas. However, temperatures will fall a little more closer to average.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Dubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Welcome back. It's 3:45. I'm Martin Daubney and this is GB News. Now, at 4 o'clock, I'll speak to a former Tory MP on the sexting scam that shocked Parliament. But before that, a pro-Palestine protest is due to start in London around about 4 o'clock, in 15 minutes' time, in fact. And it's due to go right past a pro-Israel demonstration outside the Houses of Parliament. Let's cross live now to central London and speak to our reporter, Charlie Peters, who's on the ground. Charlie, welcome to the show. The demo is just about to kick off. What's happening?
Well, the speaking is just beginning here as the crowds gather. Hundreds have arrived in the last hour here to begin this march towards Downing Street for speeches at Whitehall. The Quds Day March has been taking place on the last Friday of Ramadan for over 40 years. It's been happening all over the world, and this particular event in Britain has attracted controversy in the past due to some of the statements and flags shown here. In previous years, we've seen the flags of Hamas and Hezbollah flown, both of those now designated terrorist organisations. Just now we've heard from a speaker here saying that they don't want to be baited by protesters who are counter-protesters at Parliament Square, and they said that the police aren't there to keep an eye on them, but to prevent any conflict with the two protesting groups. We heard this morning that the Home Office has urged the Met to take a zero-tolerance approach to any law-breaking today. Well, just 20 minutes ago, we saw a man being interviewed by the police. He had some photos of Hitler in the back of his car. We saw the conversation take place. We saw those photos of Hitler there. He was released back into the crowd just 10 minutes ago. This march soon to take place. They will pass through that counter-protest in Parliament Square and then onto Downing Street, where we expect to hear several speeches from leading figures in the pro-Palestinian movement.
Yeah, Charlie, astonishing pictures there. You mentioned of Adolf Hitler. I've just seen them. I believe you photographed that on yourself, right? And we'll try and get those pictures up later. An astonishing thing to put out. Presumably the police will be making arrests on that straight away.
Indeed, well, this protest has attracted significant controversy in the past, in particular at the moment due to the ongoing Israel-Hamas war, with significant attention going towards the actions of Israel in the last week after aid workers were killed in the Gaza Strip. But regardless of the current discussion regarding the conflict, there has been significant criticism of this event going ahead today. The Community Security Trust has said that the event is inspired by Iran, where it originated, with all the extremism and anti-Semitism that entails. We've also heard from the Jewish Board of Deputies, who said that it was an Iran-backed hate fest. By contrast, the chair of the Islamic Human Rights Commission, which is one of the organisers of the event, said, "We are not here to appease a handful of genocide apologists. We are demonstrating to highlight the injustices and horrors being faced by the Palestinian people. It will be business as usual." They have rejected calls to tone down this controversial event, and we'll be here to observe as it progresses over the coming hours.
Johnny Peters live from central London. We'll be back to you throughout the show, of course, as this march heads towards Parliament Square. Thank you for joining us on the show from the front line there. Now, if you hope that the weather might finally be about to improve, then I'm afraid I've got some bad news for you, because parts of the UK are about to be hit by Storm Kathleen, which will bring rain and winds of up to 70 miles an hour. Well, weather journalist Nathan Rao joins me now. Nathan, welcome to the show.
Hello, good afternoon.
Nathan, every time we seem to talk, it's because the weather's terrible. I don't know if it's me or if it's you or if it's just Mother Nature itself. But the question I want to ask, Nathan, is, are we going through an unusually stormy period? We're on Kathleen already. It's only April. If we're not careful, we're going to need a bigger alphabet.
Yes, I think that's a fair statement to make. We're on number 11 now. And if you remember, it was January that we were talking about Storm Jocelyn, and we had Storm Henk, and we had Storm Babette, which caused a lot of damage at the end of this year, at the end of last year. And we are now on Storm 11. We expect to see about 6 or 7 storms every year. So this year is unusual twofold. One, in the number of storms we've had since the beginning of the storm season, which is about September. And 2, because this one has come quite late in the year. Around April, we expect to see a calmer picture with higher pressure building. Storms are usually a product of low pressure, and that's what we're seeing at the moment, low pressure being pulled in by the jet stream. The jet stream is unusually low over the UK at the moment, where we'd usually expect to see it about October, November when we get the storm season. So Kathleen, who is going to arrive in a pretty bad mood tomorrow morning, is unusual in that she is number 11 and that she's arriving pretty late in the season.
Yeah, a woman scorned should never be mocked, Nathan. So where should we batten down the hatches? Who's going to feel the wrath of Kathleen?
Right, well, to clarify, there are actually 2 storm systems that are going to affect the UK. One of them is Storm Olivia. That's been named by the Portuguese Met Service. That's sort of actually coming in front of Kathleen, which is due to arrive in the early hours of tomorrow. Olivia is going to give Kathleen a bit of a boost. And when Kathleen arrives from around 8 o'clock, that is when the Met Office warnings kick in, between 8 tomorrow morning and 10 tomorrow night. It's going to be Scotland and the west coast of England, Wales, the southwest and the northwest that are going to feel the full force of this. If you're in the east, if you're in the other side of the country, you might actually wonder what all the fuss is about, because it'll probably be drier and more settled over there. But the west coast of the country is going to feel the brunt of Kathleen. As I mentioned, she's a pretty deep, low pressure system that's coming in from the Atlantic. But rather than sweeping right across the UK, as they sometimes do, she's sort of hovering off the west coast and then moving northwards. And that is why it's going to be western regions that are under the wrath of the warnings for tomorrow through the day. So if you're in those areas, it's 70-mile-per-hour winds, rain, certainly disruption to transport and traffic. And the Met Office are always warning, you may have seen in the newspapers and things, this warning of danger to life, with very, very strong winds of 70 miles per hour, which are going to be mostly on the peripheries around the coasts and exposed areas. You can get flying debris and dangerous coastal conditions. So those are the things to watch out for tomorrow.
Briefly yesterday, but mostly it's been raining. And part of the problem with a storm dumping its weather like this, it's falling onto already saturated ground. Are we looking at being up to our ankles in it or worse?
Absolutely. Now, the Environment Agency has got numerous flood alerts and flood warnings out because any rain now falling on the ground is going to be problematic. This is because we've had numbers of storms through the year, as I was just mentioning. A lot of those brought heavy rainfall, and the water table is now reaching capacity. So flooding is very easy to happen. There are certain different types of flooding. There's surface water flooding, river flooding, and water table flooding. And because we've had such a long period of wet weather since the storm season started in September, the water tables really are at capacity. So any more falling on top of that is going to bring the risk of flooding. And that's why the Environment Agency flood alerts and flood warnings are in place. So where you do get heavy, persistent rain, you are probably going to see flooding as these storm systems move through. In better news, though, after Kathleen has moved through over the weekend, higher pressure, which always brings better weather at this time of year, looks like it's going to build across the south towards the beginning of next week. So hopefully it will turn drier from then. But in the north, there may be more rain to come.
Nathan Rao, thank you. Always a pleasure to speak to you, even when stormy weather is approaching. An excellent summary. Thank you very much of Storm, Olivia and Kathleen about to bash into us. Now, I've got a few emails to run through before the end of this hour. Really got you going about the sexting scam. William Ragg, the MP, it has to be said, not a great deal of sympathy for William Ragg out there. Here's what Brendan says. William Ragg is in a position of responsibility, yet still he has done this. This just goes to show you the level of naivety politicians seem to have today. I think we don't want people like this running the country. Will says this: I'm beyond bewildered at the stupidity and lack of morality by MPs doing things such as this. The response of our pencil-neck Chancellor makes it even worse. The Tories are toast. Will, why don't you speak your mind? And quickly, Katie says this: at every stage, this man has shown zero judgment and zero common sense. Why is he an MP? Keep those views coming in. gbviews@gbnews.com. Now, after the break, a man at a pro-Palestine protest has been spoken to by a police officer after pictures of Adolf Hitler were found in the boot of a car. But the man was not arrested. We'll be live to that protest in a few minutes' time. Charlie Peters is there, and we'll have those images to show you. They're on their way, don't forget, to a pro-Israel protest. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel. But now, let's have your weather, and it's Annie Shuttleworth.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. Well, Storm Kathleen is on the way for this weekend, but it will be turning much warmer than it has been lately. The winds will also pick up. Here is Storm Kathleen developing out to the west of the UK. Ahead of that, we have got a weather front across northern areas. That's brought some snow earlier today. That's much turning to rain now as the temperatures start to pick up through the rest of the evening. Temperatures will rise as well from the southwest through the night, so it's going to be a very mild night, but there will be some very heavy rain for parts of Northern Ireland, much of Scotland as well for a time. Much of the rain should clear through by tomorrow morning, though, to leave a fairly dry start for the bulk of England and Wales. And as I said, it will be a very mild start to the day. Those temperatures are closer to the daytime average for this time of year. Throughout the day, across eastern areas of England, southeastern areas of Scotland, it should stay largely dry through the day. But Storm Kathleen is developing. It will push up to the west of the UK. There are wind warnings in force. There's likely to be some delays to travel across western areas of England, Wales and Scotland, as well as Northern Ireland. Some large waves as well. But in the east, where it stays fairly dry, there'll be highs of 22 degrees. Sunday's going to be another fairly mild day, but it will be more in the way of showers, particularly across western areas, Wales, northwestern England in particular, seeing some of those heavier showers, and it's going to stay windy in the far north. Next week, it does look like it's going to turn a little bit drier across southern areas. However, temperatures will fall a little more closer to average.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm John Vincent. Queues on the M6 toll northbound in Staffordshire is partially blocked for an accident at the toll booths. The A1M northbound in Nottinghamshire is closed for recovery work following an earlier lorry fire. That's between junction 34 Blythe and 35 for the M18. M5 northbound in Gloucestershire has a lane closed for emergency repairs. That's between junction 9 Tewkesbury and 8 for the M50. And the M5 northbound in Somerset partially blocked. That's due to an accident between junction 26 Wellington and 25 for Taunton. Slow traffic on the M11 southbound in Essex. That's all due to an accident at junction 9 Saffron Walden. And we're seeing slow traffic on the M4 eastbound near Cardiff if you're travelling just past junction 30 for Cardiff Gate up towards 26 Malpas Road. And that's your latest travel news.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
With thanks to Variety Cruises, a family company sailing since 1942, you have the chance to win a £10,000 7-night small boat cruise for two. With flights, meals, excursions and drinks included, you'll be able to choose from any one of their 2025 Greek adventures and explore Greece like never before. Plus, you'll also win £10,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer sizzle. And we'll pack you off with these luxury travel gifts. For a chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 26th of April. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
A very good afternoon to you and a happy Friday. It's 4 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News, broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster, all across the UK. Coming up, a man at a pro-Palestine protest in central London has been spoken to by police after pictures of Adolf Hitler were found in the boot of his car. We'll have more on that straight away after this. I'll also have a GB News exclusive on the honey trap scandal that's shocked Westminster. And I'll bring you some of the messages that were sent by one of the people responsible. And 29 million of us will benefit from tomorrow's record-breaking cut in national insurance. And I'll ask our economics and business editor, Liam Halligan, if it's good news or if Labour are right to call it a Tory tax con. And there's fantastic news about the King. King Charles is due to visit Australia in October as planned, and apparently he's raring to go, as am I. And that's all coming up between now and 6 o'clock. Welcome to the show on this Friday afternoon. Very, very soon we'll cross to Parliament Square, where Charlie Peters is on the demo, a pro-Palestine march, yet another one, and also approaching towards a pro-Israel demo. We'll have exclusive pictures of a man who was stopped by police, and in that car were placards of Adolf Hitler. I mean, seriously, how provocative can you be going towards a pro-Israel demo with tools like that? We'll have the exclusive on that coming up. And I want to hear from you as well on this sext scam that's going on. Hundreds of emails in so far, got to be said. Not a great deal of sympathy out there for MPs who are putting lewd pictures on the internet. Let me know your thoughts as ever. gbviews@gbnews.com is the email address. But first, let's do your news headlines with Ray Edison.
Martin, thank you. The top story this hour. Human remains have been found wrapped in plastic at a nature reserve in Salford. Greater Manchester Police says a murder investigation has been launched following the discovery by the member of a public at Kersaldale. Chief Superintendent and District Commander for Salford, Tony Creeley, says detectives need to make a breakthrough in this case. The force is appealing for anyone with any information to come forward.
We believe that these remains are likely to have been here for a matter of days, and it really is a tragic case. Our priority now is establishing who this person is and ensuring that we carry out a diligent and respectful investigation on behalf of that person and their family, whoever they may be. We are speaking to those locals in the area, dog walkers, passers-by, or anyone else who may have the smallest bit of information.
Some breaking news to bring you now. A magnitude 4.8 earthquake has hit New Jersey in New York. The US Geological Society says it was just 5 kilometres deep. No damage has yet been reported. This is a developing story and we'll bring you more as we get it. In other news, government security experts have been called in to analyse the WhatsApp messages at the heart of the Westminster sext scandal. So far, around a dozen MPs, staff and journalists are known to have been targeted, and sources have told GB News more are coming forward. It's after Tory MP William Ragg told The Times he'd sent intimate pictures of himself to someone on a gay dating app and was then manipulated into providing phone numbers. He's expected to be contacted today and will be asked for a list of the numbers he shared. The Metropolitan Police has also confirmed it's working with other forces over blackmail concerns. Chancellor Jeremy Hunt says everyone needs to take cybersecurity seriously.
Well, I think the events of the last few days have been a great cause for concern. The MP involved has given a courageous and fulsome apology. But the lesson here for all MPs is that they need to be very careful about cybersecurity, and indeed it's the lesson for members of the public as well, because this is something that we are all having to face in our daily lives.
Millions of people will receive a boost in take-home pay from tomorrow following a cut to employee national insurance. From the start of the new tax year, Class 1 contributions will be reduced from 10 to 8%. Meanwhile, a further 2 million self-employed people will see their Class 4 national insurance reduced from 8 to 6%. The government says around 29 million workers will benefit from the changes. However, Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves says taxes are actually going up.
While they say tomorrow that taxes are going down, all of the numbers show that taxes are on the rise. Taxes today are at a 70-year high, and they're due to increase in every single year of the forecast period. In fact, by the end of the forecast, the average British family would be paying £870 more in tax because of the frozen national insurance and income tax threshold, and because of increases in council tax too. That is the Conservatives' double whammy on tax.
The Israeli military has dismissed 2 officers over the drone strikes which killed 7 aid workers on Monday, including 3 Brits. John Chapman, James Henderson and James Kirby were among the World Central Kitchen workers who died. US President Joe Biden has warned Israel future support for the country depends on the steps taken to protect civilians and aid workers. Israel has since announced it's opening new routes for humanitarian aid deliveries into Gaza, with the Erez crossing opening for the first time since the Hamas attacks in October. Consultants have accepted a pay offer from the government, ending a year-long dispute. The British Medical Association says 83% of members in England voted in favour of the offer, which is an improvement on one rejected earlier this year. Consultants have taken strike action over the past year, adding to the NHS waiting list, which has also been affected by the junior doctors dispute, which remains unresolved. Thames Water's holding company has defaulted on some of its debts. Kemble Water Finance Limited was unable to meet an interest payment deadline. The firm is now urging lenders who hold around $400 million of company bonds not to take creditor action while they look at repayment options. It comes after Thames Water investors pulled £500 million in funding, worsening its financial position. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now back to Martin.
Thank you, Tatiana. Now, we start with the news we broke in the last few minutes, and it's this. A man at a pro-Palestine protest in central London has been spoken to by police after pictures of Adolf Hitler were found in the boot of a car. Let's cross now to central London and speak to our reporter on the front line, Charlie Peters. Charlie, you reported these images found in a car, absolutely atrocious. Tell us, what's the latest?
Oh, yeah, we saw the conversation taking place between the man and the police live as it happened. We saw them looking through the boot of the car where we saw these photos of Adolf Hitler, along with the caption, "You are becoming what you hated." Now, the police took him away at the time in the back of a police carrier, but about 20 minutes later, he was released and returned into the crowd. The police there said he wasn't arrested, and they also said that they hadn't seen the photos of Hitler when I spoke to one of the officers involved in cordoning the situation. That march that he's a part of, that protester, has now set off from Marsham Street outside the Home Office in the heart of Westminster. We've just taken the route that they are set to embark on, and in about 15 minutes they should arrive here in Parliament Square, where a significant counter-demonstration of pro-Israeli protesters has gathered. Just moments before we came to you, Martin, we saw a man brandishing a Lebanese flag, waving it in front of the protesters, which attracted a significant level of conversation between the two sides. Before they set off those marches back in Marsham Street, a speaker at the head of the march said, "Do not be baited by the pro-Israel demonstration." He said that the march that he was on, the Al-Quds Day marching demonstration, was a gathering of Jews, Christians and Muslims. He said it was what represented London and that they were marching to campaign against a genocide where he said some 30,000 people had been killed. We're expecting those marchers to reach Whitehall just behind me and deliver speeches outside of Downing Street in the coming hours.
Charlie Peters, on my way into studio today, I noticed a significant police presence, many riot vans down all the side streets. Winston Churchill statue also fenced off as usual. How many coppers are out there, mate?
Hundreds. The Met said earlier today that they would put out 500 police officers to cover this protest. It comes at the same time as the government started its new counter-protest measures. We've heard that the serious prevention and disruption orders will come into effect from today. We don't anticipate that those will be used on the planned march that we've seen here, but it comes, of course, at a febrile atmosphere for these pro-Palestine demonstrations that have been taking place every other weekend in London since the start of the Israel-Hamas war on the 7th of October. Those marches as part of the Quds Day demonstration have been urged to be restrained today by those organising. Leaflets have been handing out advising them on how to engage with this day. Quds is the Arabic term for Jerusalem, and they are marching as they have for over 40 years around the world to mark what they say is the occupied West Bank, which has been in that state since 1967, since the end of the Six-Day War. So those protests likely to clash with those gathered behind me here in Parliament Square in the next hour as they begin that march into the heart of Westminster.
Thank you, Charlie Peters, live from Parliament Square. Of course, we'll cross back to you throughout the show for more updates as they happen. Now to the honey trap sexting scandal that has shocked Parliament and the rest of the country, and we understand that well over a dozen figures in Westminster have been targeted. Tory MP William Ragg has apologised after he said he was manipulated into giving the personal phone numbers of colleagues to a man he met on a gay dating app. And GB News has today been given exclusive access to some of those messages. A message would be sent by someone pretending to have known the recipient. In this instance here, a person claiming to be called Charlie said, "Was sad not to bump into you over conference season. It's been too long." And this was followed by the flirtatious message, "Do I need to do something better to grab your attention?" Well, GB News understands messages were sent over a period spanning 5 months. And here, GB News viewers can see persistent messages from the same number. Well, I'm joined in our studio in Westminster by our political editor, Chris Hope. Chris, we spoke about this in the last hour. Jeremy Hunt saying that there's been a fulsome and brave apology from William Ragg, but GB News viewers are having none of the same sympathy at all. In fact, sample words are naive. Sample words are stupid, cowardice, and there is no sympathy. This is a basic error. How can these people be running the country? Are they being harsh?
Well, I think they're probably being people who don't know William Ragg. Jeremy Hunt does know William Ragg, knows he's been through mental health issues. He's talked to our colleague Gloria De Piero on GB News about them. He's written about them. We know he had some time off in 2022. So that's why Jeremy Hunt may have said it's a courageous and fulsome apology. The Labour Party is saying the issue of the whip, whether the right to be a Tory MP should be taken away from Mr Ragg, is in the hands of the whips. It's not one for us to decide. Labour being much more cool about assessing what's happened here. Maybe they're more where the country is, but no question, people who know William Ragg are sympathetic towards him. He, for his own part, has recognised he did something wrong. Why on earth he gave out the numbers of friends and colleagues to these strangers to get them off his back when you're like feeding a wolf that's come back for more meat, and that's what happened. He said clearly to the Times, I've hurt people by being weak. I was scared. I'm mortified. I'm so sorry, and so it goes on. But why not, as some are saying elsewhere today, why not just tell the police, the authorities, there's a problem here. As things stand, 2 forces are investigating, Leicestershire Police, the Met Police. Lindsay Hoyle wrote to MPs last night. He's called in government security experts, partners in government, as he calls them, to analyse and understand the messages. The big worry is this a China operation, a Russia operation, foreign actors, or is it more close to home? I'm getting the feeling from sources in Parliament that it's not likely to be a foreign actor. It's more likely to be someone just sort of in the UK trying to catch out somebody who was weak and known to be weak. But more are coming in. We know 12 or 14 or so affected, but more are reporting themselves today as we go through the day.
OK, well, I'm joined now by a former Conservative MP, Neil Parish. Neil, welcome to the show.
Hello, Martin.
So, Neil, of course, you had to resign from Parliament over a scandal. What do you think William Ragg will be going through today? And more to the point, why on earth would somebody in an elected position, a senior parliamentarian, do something which viewers of GB News are saying is naive at best?
Yeah, I mean, he's a really decent guy, actually, William, and I know him, and like I said, he has had some some problems as well. But you see, you have to be so careful when you are a member of parliament, especially giving out pictures, and then of course being in a place where you can be potentially blackmailed. But like I said, I think it's sometimes with people. I mean, I was fortunate enough that I was married and courted, a very old-fashioned word, long before I went into politics. So whereas when you are in politics and a public figure, if you are dating in any sort of shape or form, you have to be careful because people can use that, not only if you supply it, but they can use it out of context and all sorts of things. And I think this is probably very much a wake-up call, not just for William, but for several others, I suspect.
Neil, I'm in the studio here with Martin, Chris Hope. Of course, you had to resign as an MP, didn't you, after you were seen caught looking at pornography on your mobile phone in the Commons chamber. Do you understand why male politicians get caught out in that way? I mean, you weren't forced to do that, but you did it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't try and justify myself for one moment. I mean, it was a huge mistake, and I resigned and left. The only thing with mine was that I was not, I was doing something I really shouldn't have been doing, tempted and did it, but I wasn't actually meaning to affect anybody else other than my dear wife, who was very understanding about it, bless her. But like I said, otherwise, I think when you are not in a permanent relationship, then I think it puts even more pressure on you. And then, like I said, it can be exploited as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's a hell of a position to be in. And I have some empathy with William because he is a decent enough guy, albeit he's made mistakes. But, I think, in the end, apologise, and I think he should be able to carry on being an MP, and I think probably carry on having the whip, the Conservative whip, but that will be up for the party to decide. But in the end, of course, it's a personal decision as to what you do as an individual, because I took that personal decision.
Neil, thank you for being so forthright on that matter, but it has to be said that the kind of adjectives being used by GB News viewers to summarise William Ragg's behaviour are naivety, stupidity, a lack of morality, silly at the best, and more to the point, people expect elected parliamentarians, perhaps naively, perhaps they are just humans after all, but they do expect a higher code of moral conduct. Are we seeing the reality here, and that is they're just flawed people like the rest of us?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Parliament is made up of sort of 650 members of Parliament. They come from all walks of life. They have all kinds of sexualities, and they have, they are individuals, and some are stronger than others, and some do stupid things and pay a heavy price for it. I think sometimes perhaps we as politicians set ourselves up too much as being, we are there to govern the country and look after the country, so people expect us to behave in a way, and we do let ourselves down and let our other colleagues down when we make mistakes. But I think that we are all frail, if you like, individuals and have made mistakes. So I think with William, it was probably better had he come cleaner sooner. But I think, he's done the right thing now. And I think, let it all take its course. But I think I would just say to members of the public, you expect more and you probably deserve more. But I think you've also got to accept that we are all human beings at the end of the day, and we can make mistakes.
OK, thank you for being so forthright and honest and joining us on the show this afternoon. That's former Conservative MP Neil Parish. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, William Ragg has issued this statement. He said, they had compromising things on me. They wouldn't leave me alone. They would ask for people. I gave them some numbers, not all of them. I told him to stop. He's manipulated me and now I've hurt other people. I got chatting to a guy on an app and we exchanged pictures. We were meant to meet up for drinks, but then didn't. Then he started asking for numbers of people. I was worried because he had stuff on me. You gave me a WhatsApp number which doesn't work now. I've hurt people by being weak. I was scared. I'm mortified. I'm so sorry that my weakness has caused other people hurt. It's a statement from the heart there. Now, you may have booked your holiday for this year, but what about next year? Well, you could win a bespoke Greek cruise for two in our brand new giveaway. Not only that, but 10 grand in cold, hard, tax-free cash and a luxury travel gift package on top of it too. Now, it's our biggest giveaway so far, and here's how you could fill your boots.
With thanks to Variety Cruises, a family company sailing since 1942, you have the chance to win a £10,000 7-night small boat cruise for two. With flights, meals, excursions and drinks included, you'll be able to choose from any one of their 2025 Greek adventures and explore Greece like never before. Plus, you'll also win £10,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer sizzle. And we'll pack you off with these luxury travel gifts. For a chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 26th of April. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Great stuff. Now, Chancellor of the Exchequer, Jeremy Hunt, says the biggest ever national insurance cuts shows the government stands behind people who work hard. But Labour, as you'd expect, claim it's nothing more than a Tory tax con. What's the truth? I'll ask Liam Halligan next. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Farage, Monday to Thursday from 7 p.m.
I believe our farmers can compete globally. If I visit some Somerset farmers, they are extremely efficient and highly competitive and innovative, and we need to encourage the best.
And it's a high-end product.
It's a high-end product.
Which was one of the points that was being made earlier.
And that we have to focus on what we are good at. And what our protectionism does at the moment is protects Irish beef farmers, French beef farmers and Dutch beef farmers, as opposed to buying cheaper beef from Australia. I have no desire
Jacob,
to protect EU farms.
The problem is that we live in the Northern Hemisphere and we have a very difficult climate. So actually, and we know this because when the Corn Laws were repealed in 1846, we know darned well what happened to agriculture.
It led to cheap bread. It made the society much better off.
This has been an argument going on for 150 years.
It's simply wrong. British agriculture didn't collapse at that point. There was a glut in the market 30 years later, which comes much after the Corn Laws.
Well, obviously, things were much slower in those days. It took a long time for that to impact.
Actually, do you know what? The principles of that debate and this debate are not dissimilar.
No, that's right.
They're not dissimilar.
It's very, very... I always go on about Corn Laws. It's my favourite subject.
No. And it was a wonderful upwelling and grassroots campaign and all the rest of it. But whether we have a Conservative or a Labour government, do you actually think that a Labour government will be any closer or more connected to your community than this Conservative one?
The Labour government, it's in their interest to make sure that Britain has got food. And with the way the world is right now, we're in a very fragile situation, which is why we need food security. And every farmer I know talks about food security because we understand how much less food is being
We better have a look at net zero commitments too, but another time.
It's net zero commitments. It'll be wind farms.
Enough. We can argue all night about this.
Let's do it. I'm up for arguing all night.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to 4:25. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News. Now, later in the show, the latest on whether Veterans Minister Johnny Mercer could be sent to prison. Deadline just passed. Now, before that, millions of workers will see a cut in their national insurance rate from tomorrow, which could help ease some of the financial strain on household budgets. But it's being criticised, with many saying any cuts will be offset by people already being dragged into higher tax brackets. And this was put to Chancellor Jeremy Hunt earlier.
We've always been very open about the fact that after COVID and the cost of living crisis, the energy crisis, we had to put taxes up. But the fundamental divide in British politics is between a Conservative Party, having taken difficult decisions on the economy, is now starting to bring taxes down. 2p off national insurance from Saturday, another 2p off in the autumn statement last year. That came through in January. We want to bring the tax burden down. The Labour Party wants to keep it as it is, and that is the big choice that people will have in the general election this year.
But Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves says taxes are only going up with the Tories.
While they say tomorrow that taxes are going down, all of the numbers show that taxes are on the rise. Taxes today are at a 70-year high, and they're due to increase in every single year of the forecast period. In fact, by the end of the forecast, the average British family would be paying £870 more in tax because of the frozen national insurance and income tax threshold, and because of increases in council tax too. That is the Conservatives' double whammy on tax.
Well, that's as clear as mud, so let's try and make some sense of it. I'm joined by Liam Halligan, GB News' economics and business editor, with On the Money. So, Liam, £900 better off if you believe the Chancellor of the Exchequer. If you believe the Labour Party, we're going to be dragged into higher taxes. Where's the reality?
Well, they're both right and they're both wrong in some senses, but I guess that's politics for you. Let's have a look at what the Chancellor's saying today. What he's really doing is he's emphasising the fact that pre-announced policies are now starting to be introduced, and he's stressing that the Tories are cutting taxes. That's his message. So let's have a look at some of the details. In January, the Chancellor cut the headline rate of national insurance for employees, for workers, from 12% to 10%, so 12p to 10p in the pound. As of tomorrow, that headline national insurance rate is cut again from 10% to 8%. And look, it's just arithmetically undeniable that if you cut the headline rate of national insurance for the average worker, that's going to save them about 900 quid a year on their tax bill. The tax burden, though, is still very high. That's because tax thresholds have been frozen from 2021, when Rishi Sunak himself was Chancellor, and then again by Jeremy Hunt, all the way to 2028. This is the 12.5 grand where you start paying tax. It's where you start paying the basic rate of income tax. It's where you start paying the upper rate of income tax. And those frozen tax thresholds mean, as Rachel Reeves says, even though the headline rate of national insurance is coming down, that the tax burden, tax overall as a share of the size of our economy, tax as a share of GDP, that is approaching a 70-year high. So yes, there are headline tax cuts. Yes, the second of them is coming in tomorrow, as the Chancellor says. Yes, the Tories want to get another tax cut in before a general election, probably in September or October. But it is also true, because tax thresholds have been frozen from 2021 all the way through to 2028, that the tax burden overall is going up, even though the headline rate of national insurance is going down. You with me?
I am with you. Now, fiscal drag is something that you clarified for me and I now get, and that is more people are paying...
God, it was tough getting it into your head.
But I got it, because but as inflation goes up, your wages go up, but the threshold is still the same, so, well, I'm paying more tax.
That's right.
And that neutralises this NI cut, does it?
That's right. I mean, the simplest way to think about fiscal drag is that you're dragged into a higher tax bracket. For instance, if you earned 11 grand and now, because of wage increases, that goes up to 12 grand or 13 grand, particularly above 12.5 grand. That means rather than paying no income tax, you now pay income tax.
Yeah.
So your tax burden's gone up because you've earned more money because the threshold has been frozen. And look, a lot of people will be screaming at the telly at the moment because we've been talking about this headline cut to national insurance, and pensioners will say, well, we don't get a cut to our headline rate of national insurance because we don't pay national insurance. That's true, they don't. That's why the Tories have gone for a cut in national insurance, because it's cheaper than a cut in income tax, as pensioners also pay income tax. But this is still costing the government, or it's still costing us, if you like. It's about £9 to £10 billion of our own money that we're being bribed with here. But it is a generally progressive thing to do. If you lower the headline rate of national insurance, that is going to help the least well-off as well as those who are better off. It wouldn't help them as much as if the government did what I want them to do, which is to raise the personal threshold from 12.5 grand all the way up to 20 grand or even more. That's the real way for less well-off people to keep more of their own money and pay less tax. But the government isn't up for doing that at this point, and I doubt ever. That's why the Chancellor is stressing what he is doing, which is lowering the headline rate of national insurance for the second time, possibly the second of 3 times before the election. We'll see what the Tories say. But Rachel Rees is right. Despite that, the overall tax burden is still going up.
Lee Madigan, thank you for making complicated things simple to understand, especially for simple folk like me. Always a pleasure. Thank you very much. There's lots more still to come between now and 5 o'clock, and there's fresh developments today in a story we first broke back in January about people buying fake Royal Mail stamps. But first, let's have your latest news headlines, and it's Tatiana Sanchez.
Martin, thank you. The top stories. Police are searching for other body parts after the discovery of a torso at a Salford nature reserve. Greater Manchester Police says the human remains were found wrapped in plastic by a member of the public at Kersal Dale. The gender and age of the person are currently unknown, but police believe it was an adult. A murder investigation is now underway and a search is taking place in the local area. Chief Superintendent Tony Creeley says detectives need a breakthrough in this tragic case.
That these remains are likely to have been here for a matter of days, and it really is a tragic case. Our priority now is establishing who this person is and ensuring that we carry out a diligent and respectful investigation on behalf of that person and their family, whoever they may be. We are speaking to those locals in the area, dog walkers, passers-by, or anyone else who may have the smallest bit of information.
Government security experts have been called in to analyse WhatsApp messages at the heart of the Westminster sex scandal. So far, around a dozen MPs, staff and journalists are known to have been targeted, and sources have told GB News more are coming forward. It's after Tory MP William Ragg told The Times he'd sent intimate pictures of himself to someone on a gay dating app and was then manipulated into providing the contacts. Consultants have accepted a pay offer from the government, ending a year-long dispute. The British Medical Association says 83% of members in England voted in favour of the offer, which is an improvement on one rejected earlier this year. Consultants have been striking over the past year, adding to the NHS waiting list, which has also been affected by the junior doctors' dispute, which remains unresolved. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Tatiana. Now, this show is all about you, and loads of you have already got in touch today with your thoughts on William Ragg, the sex scandal, and that protest march going on right now, right out there as we speak. Keep those emails coming in. gbviews@gbnews.com is the email address, and I'll read out a selection of them a little later in the show. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The latest GB News travel. Good afternoon, I'm John Vincent. Queues on the M6 toll northbound in Staffordshire is partially blocked for an accident at the toll booths. The A1M northbound in Nottinghamshire is closed for recovery work following an earlier lorry fire. That's between junction 34 Blythe and 35 for the M18. M5 northbound in Gloucestershire has a lane closed for emergency repairs. That's between junction 9 Tewkesbury and 8 for the M50. And the M5 northbound in Somerset partially blocked. That's due to an accident between junction 26 Wellington and 25 for Taunton. Slow traffic on the M11 southbound in Essex. That's all due to an accident at junction 9 Saffron Walden. And we're seeing slow traffic on the M4 eastbound near Cardiff if you're travelling just past junction 30 for Cardiff Gate up towards 26 Malpas Road. And that's your latest travel news.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
Men's mental health, men are starting to talk a lot more. You've been through a lot of stuff that people don't know about.
Yeah, I mean, the last few years for me have been very, very difficult. People see me on tour, performing, making music, but myself and my wife, we went through 2 miscarriages. For us, that was a very devastating time and very difficult to know how to kind of process those emotions. And I guess as a man, I did the thing of bottling up my emotions, and where I feel comfortable to be able to express myself is in the studio, whereas, she had obviously a different reaction to, what happened to us, because not only was it happening to her mentally, psychologically, but it was happening to her physically as well. And I think something that she really wanted to see from me was that sensitivity and that emotion. And I thought that as a man, being strong was trying to bottle up my emotions and just show her that, that I'm being strong for her. But actually being strong is talking about it. And what's happened ever since I've started to talk about it is I've spoken to more men that have experienced baby loss. My wife forced out of me, how do you feel? And I ended up as a mess on the floor. I was exasperating, crying, almost inconsolable. She was just holding me in her arms as we cried together, and and I didn't realise I needed that release so badly. Like I said, I've been able to speak to other men, and we've been able to cry together, and they shared their own experiences, which they did similar to me. But actually, as men, I feel like that conversation and that sensitivity and being able to be emotional together.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 4:38. I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News. Now, later in the show, I get reaction to some great news about King Charles, because he's due to visit Australia in October as planned, and apparently he's raring to go. Now to a new development in a story GB News first broke in January, and Royal Mail has admitted to branding a genuine barcoded postage stamp as a counterfeit and charging the recipient £5 of the pleasure of receiving it. Well, Royal Mail has since sent her a £5 cheque and issued an apology after her MP, Sir Paul Beresford, alerted them to the matter. Now I'm joined in the studio in Westminster by GB News' digital finance reporter Jessica Sheldon, who first broke this story. Jessica, first off, well done you. Now, you've been on the story since the very, very beginning, fighting for people out there, getting these dodgy stamps. Tell us about the latest development.
Yeah, so we've had a really interesting development this week with a lady who has found that the stamp that she sent was genuine, but Royal Mail has admitted that they called it counterfeit despite it being genuine. So, yes, they have issued an apology. She wrote to her MP, who got in touch, and they checked over the stamp. They said that Royal Mail had therefore been wrong to apply the surcharge, and they are very sorry that their actions have failed her on this occasion. So it's a big development that Royal Mail said they're not taking this lightly. They did say that whilst it's rare that items are incorrectly charged, an investigation is now underway to ascertain why it has happened and what can be done to prevent it from happening again.
And it never rains but it pours for the post office. I mean, first we had the sub-postmasters and postmistresses scandal, and they seem to have put their foot in it again, and we're still none the wiser, are we, about how these counterfeits are even getting in the mix?
Yeah, I think there's two separate issues. So we have seen stamps which do look, when you look at them close up, they do look counterfeit and they are totally flat on the barcode.
Yeah.
But this seems to be that it was a genuine stamp and they called it counterfeit. So there needs to be some answers. We need to know what's happened so we can send our post without worrying that our loved ones are going to have to pay £5 when they get it.
And of course, modern printing is so sophisticated now, forgery has never been easier. But that doesn't even seem to be this. This is actually bona fide stamps bought from bona fide reputable outlets, from post offices, from big supermarkets, and people are getting stung on their doorstep. And frankly, Jessica, the notion that you get a £5 cheque to pay for the fine you've already got, that doesn't seem good enough.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the issue for this lady in particular was not the money. She didn't want any money. She just wanted an answer because she had a gut feeling from the start that the stamps she bought from a very reputable high street shop were genuine. So why would her family then have to pay £5?
Well, keep going on it. You brought the stamps in earlier in the week and you can't tell the difference.
No.
I mean, they just look identical. How do they know? What, they go beep on your doorstep and that's it, you get nicked?
I wish I knew. I think this is why we need some answers.
I don't think they do know at all. Thank you very much, Jessica Sheldon, for joining us. And a reminder, if you want to see the full statement from the post office, you can catch that on gbnews.com. It's there. OK, moving on. The lengthy statement is on screen. I'm not going to read it all out. It's on the website. Now, it could take a week yet to find out whether Veterans Minister Johnny Mercer will be forced to name the whistleblowers who told him about alleged murders by the SAS in Afghanistan, or he could face being sent to prison. Would he cough up, or would he keep his quiet? I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel. We'll do that.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. Well, Storm Kathleen is on the way for this weekend, but it will be turning much warmer than it has been lately. The winds will also pick up. Here is Storm Kathleen developing out to the west of the UK. Ahead of that, we have got a weather front across northern areas. That's brought some snow earlier today. That's much turning to rain now as the temperatures start to pick up through the rest of the evening. Temperatures will rise as well from the southwest through the night, so it's going to be a very mild night, but there will be some very heavy rain for parts of Northern Ireland, much of Scotland as well for a time. Much of the rain should clear through by tomorrow morning, though, to leave a fairly dry start for the bulk of England and Wales. And as I said, it will be a very mild start to the day. Those temperatures are closer to the daytime average for this time of year. Throughout the day, across eastern areas of England, southeastern areas of Scotland, it should stay largely dry through the day. But Storm Kathleen is developing. It will push up to the west of the UK. There are wind warnings in force. There's likely to be some delays to travel across western areas of England, Wales and Scotland, as well as Northern Ireland, some large waves as well. But in the east, where it stays fairly dry, there'll be highs of 22 degrees. Sunday's going to be another fairly mild day, but it will be more in the way of showers, particularly across western areas, Wales, northwestern England in particular, seeing some of those heavier showers, and it's going to stay windy in the far north. Next week, it does look like it's going to turn a little bit drier across southern areas. However, temperatures will fall a little more closer to average.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio, and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 4:46. I'm Martin Daubney and this is GB News. Now, at 5 o'clock, we'll cross live to the pro-Palestine protest, where images of Adolf Hitler were found in the boot of a car around about an hour ago. Police spoke to a man there, but incredibly, he was not arrested. He was just simply set free. And that protest, as we speak, is heading towards a pro-Israel protest at Parliament Square. Completely different sides will be meeting, and that is the kind of placard that one of the individuals approaching was carrying. Simply let off, not arrested. What do you make of that? Email me, gbviews@gbnews.com. Is it an example of two-tiered policing? Is it an example of the police turning a blind eye to inflammatory imagery like that? How would you like to be compared to Adolf Hitler if you were protesting in favour of Israel today? Already, loads of you have been in touch on that, but keep those views coming in, and we'll cross live to that protest as it comes together shortly with Charlie Peters, who took that exclusive image earlier on. That was outside the Home Office. We'll be right on the front line as that develops. Now let's move on and get more now on a story I covered a couple of days ago. And will Veterans Minister Johnny Mercer be sent to prison? Well, he's been ordered to name the whistleblowers who told him about alleged murders by the SAS in Afghanistan. And Mercer's already said that he won't do that. And the chairman of the Afghanistan inquiry said last month that he could be jailed. And the chairman is now considering Mercer's application to challenge the order, and it could take a week for him to make that decision. Well, I'm joined now in our Westminster studio by the Evening Standard's defence editor, the superb Robert Fox. Robert, always a pleasure to talk to you about this. You have a great knack of making very complicated things very digestible. So let's start at the beginning. What were these allegations? When did they happen? And then what happened next?
Between 2010 and 2013, both in Australia, where it's come to court and there has been an inquiry, and in the UK, there have been accusations of targeted assassinations of special forces, and it was a combined special force involving Brits, Australians, New Zealanders, Canadians, and I think Germans, shooting unarmed Afghans. Now, during his time, before he became an MP, Johnny Mercer, the Veterans Minister, had served alongside the SBS, the Special Boat Service, and he had seen them at work and admired what they did. But then contacts revealed, as he was trying to pass legislation, which said, actually, we can forget about this. It was the Overseas Service Bill, then became an Act, and the Northern Ireland Act. And then somebody, contact of his, said, well, actually, there's more to this than meets the eye. Bad things were done. That's what Johnny is really trying to say. And both he, and this is where I have sympathy, and GB News reviewers will be fed up with me for saying this, I have sympathy with both. I have sympathy with Johnny Mercer as an MP, as a good steward of confidential information, and with Lord Justice Sir Christopher Haddon-Cave, who is really good at this, because Christopher Haddon-Cave said, if I'm going to get to the bottom of all these accusations, I've got to name names. I've got to know who did what to whom and when. And that's what it's about.
And at that point, though, Johnny Mercer has said no. He won't betray his sources. And so we find ourselves, Robert, at this legal impasse.
We're at a legal impasse which is so familiar to the likes of you and me.
Yeah.
You have confidential sources of information in journalism, as Johnny was saying, and they've told you things in confidence, and do you blab? And I think that this is where Johnny is really caught. I have no judgment on this, but I do have a comment. And the comment is this is precisely, or around this, is the crisis over Afghanistan, which we're now seeing in Israel over the killing of the aid workers.
Yes.
And it's a question of targeting. Who ordered whom to do what and under what circumstances? Sorry, the jargon word, which all viewers will appreciate, is rules of engagement. And this is going to be absolutely critical. Under what circumstances were people allowed to kill potential or actual Afghan or Palestinian insurgents? And this is going to be the case to try. It's not that, it will go blah, 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 blah into the long grass. What Sir Christopher Haddon-Cave decides, despite the best officers of the solicitors and so on both sides, will be fundamental.
I have to interrupt you there, I'm afraid, Robert Fox. We're going now to Charlie Peters in central London at that protest.
We're just seeing the pro-Palestine march coming across the pro-Israeli counter-protesters here at Parliament Square. There are extremely strong exchanges taking place here with members of the Al-Quds protest coming up to the pro-Israel protesters. We've seen a couple of arrests, we think, here just as these people crossed in front of the pro-Israel demonstrators. Over 500 police along this route as they monitor this march, heading from Marsham Street, the Home Office, towards Whitehall, where there will be speeches outside Downing Street. The pro-Israel demonstration is significantly smaller, with potentially over 1,000 of the Al-Quds marchers in comparison to, at best, 100, 150 pro-Israeli demonstrators here at Parliament Square. The Al-Quds March is being hosted today on the final Friday of Ramadan, the holy Islamic month. They say that they are organising the protest due to the so-called genocide taking place in Gaza. They say that 30,000 people have been killed by the IDF inside Gaza, and they are protesting against Israel and in favour of the Palestinian people. This march has been taking place across the world since 1979, but this event is the most significant Quds Day march for many years due to the current conflict taking place across the Middle East, but of course mostly in Gaza in the Israel-Hamas war. This march is also taking place at a particularly controversial time for the Israel-Hamas war in Britain, with aid workers killed in Gaza. 3 Britons, all of them British military veterans, killed by an IDF strike earlier in the week. The IDF has accepted responsibility for that strike. At the same time, we have seen political groups calling for more support for Israel. The former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, writing that in the Telegraph that significantly more support needed to be shown towards Israel, and that the Foreign Office under David Cameron, the Foreign Secretary, had started to slide away from what she described as a pro-Israel position. Some of the protests here now chanting that rape is not resistance, referring to the events of October the 7th when this war started. The protesters right at the start on Marcham Street, the speakers there said that they did not want any of the protests.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Are our relationships with foreign countries actually undermining free speech on a day-to-day basis in our universities?
Well, it's very good to be with you. It's difficult to form a kind of clear conclusion because, as we know, universities are much, much more reliant on international fees than they used to be. We are seeing some sort of troubling developments, particularly at the level of admissions criteria. We're seeing quite stark and frankly scandalous disparities in the admissions criteria for domestic students as against foreign students in some universities. And so part of the problem is that the financial incentive structures are such that universities risk becoming more and more dependent upon foreign regimes because they're simply bringing in an awful lot more money.
James, of course, all of this discussion, we say countries. Frankly, mainly we're really looking at one country, aren't we? China.
Well, China is certainly a focus. I mean, nearly 1 in 3 undergraduate students from overseas at Russell Group universities were from China in 2021. 60% of overseas postgraduates come from China. We know from the FBI and the Five Eyes security chiefs.
Violent demonstrations between counter-protesters and pro-Palestine protesters that we have seen on some of the London marches every other Saturday since the war started on October the 7th. With those marches, many demonstrations starting immediately after on Sunday, the 8th of October last year. This is, while an extremely heated march, it is peaceful. They are exchanging extremely strong messages, denigrating each other's movements, using slurs and other strong language, but we are not seeing the sort of violence and close clashes that we've seen previously. Before the protest arrived here, we did see a man with a Lebanese flag arrive and clash with the protesters here. And also we saw before the march left on Marsham Street, GBNews was able to see the police investigate a vehicle just parked by the Home Office. And within that search, we saw them take away a man because inside the boot of his car, he had photos of Hitler inside his car. He was since released, and we have seen him on this march since that moment. So he was released back onto that march and has not been rearrested since we saw those photos of Hitler in the boot of his vehicle. Several flags on display here from the pro-Palestine protest, including the flag of the Islamic Republic of Iran. The Community Security Trust, a charity that deals in anti-Semitism, has said that this is a pro-Iran hate march. The Board of Jewish Deputies, the Jewish Board of Deputies, has repeated similar language, saying that this march originated from Iran in 1979, and it continues to be a hotbed of extremism and anti-Semitism. Beyond.
Charlie, I've been on many of these demos myself, and they always start peacefully. Generally, though, things get a bit cranked up later on, particularly if the numbers of people are still piling into what is a confined area. Charlie, I've got to say, these police don't look ready for trouble if it kicks off. They're in their soft hats, they're in their shirt sleeves, a very different type of policing you might expect to see, for example, if it's the cenotaph and it's white working class football fans. Is the atmosphere in the air changing as you're there, Charlie? There's some chanting going on, the Adolf Hitler pictures, the counter chants of IDF unlikely to go down well. Do you sense the mood could be turning sour?
It's definitely a very tense atmosphere, Martin, there's no doubt about that. Some of the people here were baying for the crowd to arrive. They were excited for the arrival of this Al-Quds Day march, Quds Day being Arabic for Jerusalem. There was a great sense of anticipation, even with some of the pro-Israeli demonstrators smiling and looking forward to the pro-Palestinian protesters arriving. So it is extremely tense. There is an extreme level of hostility shared between these crowds, of course, as they take different sides of this intense war in the Middle East. But the police presence here is heavy. The entire road surrounding us completely blocked off. The Met did deploy 500 officers to this location, and it certainly looks as if the numbers that they said they would deploy have been deployed. There is a significant presence here for sure. They are monitoring the full stage. We have seen several officers with cameras closing by, and also some stewards from the Quds Day march, it appears, say legal observers keeping an eye on both sides of the protest. When we were filming earlier and we saw the man with the Hitler photos in his car, we also saw one of the stewards for the Quds Day protest as we filmed that event, trying to see the man being taken away. The steward said to us, if you want hostility, you'll get it. And I have to say, there is an atmosphere of hostility here, shared very strongly from both sides. Despite the message urging restraints and for people not to be baited at the start, it's clear that these two groups are extremely strong-willed in their views towards each other. Before the crowd arrived, there was almost an advance party from the Quds Day march. We saw one man in a full balaclava approach the corner of Parliament Square. When he started engaging with the protesters here, they rushed towards him and called him a terrorist. Very strong language being exchanged for sure. We've seen plenty of photos from the ongoing conflict being held up by both sides of the war here. Several photos of hostages being held by the pro-Israeli demonstrators, and footage purporting to be those injured by IDF strikes in Gaza being held up by the pro-Palestine marches. Many of the flags saying boycott Israel and other similar events. I've also just seen a flag for a Republican Irish outfit here, which does demonstrate some of the widespread left-wing groups that you might anticipate to engage with these political demonstrations. Plenty of placards also saying end Zionism. And as this debate goes on, with many protesters calling for Britain to end weapons, many of them calling for a two-way embargo on arms supplies to Israel between Britain. There's also a sign that says UK and Israel partners in war crimes being held up in this location. That is a significant demand being made by these protesters. They want an end to arms deals between them, and we are now expecting this 1,000-strong march to enter Parliament Square.
OK, thank you, Charlie Peters, live at Parliament Square. The pro-Palestine march, led by the Islamic Human Rights Commission, has now met with the pro-Israel demonstration. Of course, we'll be back live to that protest in a few minutes' time for a full update as it happens. And I also have the latest on the honey trap sexting scandal that's rocked Westminster. And I've also got some great news about King Charles. But before all of that, it's time for your latest news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Martin, thank you. And as you've just been hearing, tensions are rising in Westminster, where huge crowds are taking part in a pro-Palestinian protest. The Al-Quds Day demonstration began at the Home Office, with demonstrators marching to Downing Street. It's as new powers to prevent disruptive protests come into force, with offenders facing up to 6 months in prison or an unlimited fine. Serious disruption prevention orders can be used to stop repeat offenders from joining protest groups in a particular area at a particular time. Home Secretary James Cleverly says the powers target those who are dedicated to wreaking havoc. However, civil liberties organisation Liberty has described it as a shameless attempt to prevent people from being able to make their voices heard. In other news today, police are searching for other body parts after the discovery of a torso at a Salford nature reserve. Greater Manchester Police says the human remains were found wrapped in plastic by a member of the public at Kersal Dale. The gender and age of the person are currently unknown, but police believe it was an adult. A murder investigation is now underway and a search is taking place in the local area. Chief Superintendent Tony Creeley says detectives need a breakthrough in this tragic case.
We believe that these remains are likely to have been here for a matter of days, and it really is a tragic case. Our priority now is establishing who this person is and ensuring that we carry out a diligent and respectful investigation on behalf of that person and their family, whoever they may be. We are speaking to those locals in the area, dog walkers, passers-by, or anyone else who may have the smallest bit of information.
A magnitude 4.8 earthquake has hit New Jersey and New York. Cameras were seen shaking during a UN Security Council meeting, the tremors forcing the president of Save the Children to momentarily pause her speech. These are live pictures from Times Square, where it looks like business as usual. The US Geological Society says the quake was just 5 kilometres deep. No major damage has been reported. Government security experts have been called in to analyse the WhatsApp messages at the heart of the Westminster sex scandal. So far, around a dozen MPs, staff and journalists are known to have been targeted, and sources have told GB News more are coming forward. It's after Tory MP William Ragg told The Times he'd sent intimate pictures of himself to someone on a gay dating app and was then manipulated into providing phone numbers. He's expected to be contacted today and will be asked for a list of the numbers he shared. The Met Police has also confirmed it's working with other forces over blackmail concerns. Chancellor Jeremy Hunt says everyone needs to take cybersecurity seriously.
Well, I think the events of the last few days have been a great cause for concern. The MP involved has given a courageous and fulsome apology. But the lesson here for all MPs is that they need to be very careful about cybersecurity, and indeed it's the lesson for members of the public as well, because this is something that we are all having to face in our daily lives.
Millions of people will receive a boost in take-home pay from tomorrow following a cut to employee national insurance. From the start of the new tax year, Class 1 contributions will be reduced from 10 to 8%. Meanwhile, a further 2 million self-employed people will see their Class 4 national insurance reduced from 8 to 6%. The government says around 29 million workers will benefit from the changes. However, Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves says taxes are actually going up.
While they say tomorrow that taxes are going down, all of the numbers show that taxes are on the rise. Taxes today are at a 70-year high, and they're due to increase in every single year of the forecast period. In fact, by the end of the forecast, the average British family would be paying £870 more in tax because of the frozen national insurance and income tax threshold, and because of increases in council tax too. That is the Conservatives' double whammy on tax.
And consultants have accepted a pay offer from the government ending a year-long dispute. The British Medical Association says 83% of members in England voted in favour of the offer, which is an improvement on one rejected earlier this year. Consultants have taken strike action over the past year, adding to the NHS waiting list, which has also been affected by the junior doctors' dispute, which remains unresolved. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now back to Martin.
Thank you, Tatiana. Now we'll go back to Parliament Square shortly. Charlie Peters, of course, is covering The protest, the pro-Palestine protest, about 1,000 strong, he said, is approaching Parliament Square. Significant police operation, around 500 officers, in addition to normal forces, we understand, have been deployed. There's a much smaller pro-Palestine, pro-Israel protest, beg your pardon, the demo at Parliament Square. The two have now met and will be returning to the scene to report on that live soon. But let's move on for now to the honey trap sexting scandal that has shocked Parliament and the rest of the country. And we understand that well over a dozen figures in Westminster have been targeted now. And Tory MP William Ragg has apologised after he said he was manipulated into giving the personal phone numbers of colleagues to a man he met on a gay dating app. And GB News has today been given exclusive access to some of those messages. A message would be sent by someone pretending to have known the recipient. In this instance, a person claiming to be called Charlie said, "Was sad not to bump into you over conference season. It's been too long." And this was then followed up by the flirtatious message, "Do I need to do something better to grab your attention?" Well, GB News understands messages were sent over a period spanning 5 months. And here, GB News viewers can see persistent messages from the same number. Well, I'm joined now in our studio by our political editor, Christopher Hope, to discuss a scandal that has gripped the nation. Chris, thanks for coming back again. It's got to be said, we've received hundreds of emails on this topic from GB News viewers. Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, saying that William Ragg has been brave and fulsome. But the words being used by our viewers are more like this. Brendan says this is naivety. Will says stupidity, a lack of morality. John said this was silly at best. And a general feeling, Chris, that we really expect better of our elected representatives than this.
Yeah, I think William Ragg might accept that. I think he probably feels he knows he's done something wrong. He has said in his statement how they had compromising things on me. They wouldn't leave me alone. I've hurt people by being weak. I was scared. I am mortified. I'm so sorry. My weakness has caused other people's hurt. That's him fronting up what he's done. He would probably accept. He would obviously admit he wished he hadn't done it. You know, advisors are wondering today why didn't he just go to the police? Why did he feel he could get the pressure off him by giving out numbers of friends and colleagues? And that was obviously a wrong thing to do. We've got 2 police forces investigating in Leicestershire and the Met Police. We've got the Speaker Lindsay Hoyle writing to MPs and staff last night saying that the Parliamentary Security Department is working with partners in government, who I understand to be security experts in the state, to work out what were the nature of these messages and any related security risk. And he says that he said it's unwise to speculate on the origin at this stage. Leads you to believe it's a foreign country, Russia, China. Are they going after MPs who are weak, who will give away information they shouldn't do? I understand that more were coming forward today, but they, as far as I know, senior sources are saying to them it's unlikely to be a foreign actor. But very difficult. A lot of MPs, male MPs, are on their own at night time, 3 nights a week. They have a lot of thinking time. They look at their phone too much. They get into a situation where they're helping out the wrong people. We heard Neil Parish, of course, caught looking at pornography in the Commons chamber, resigns as MP. It's happened before that people just do the wrong thing. And he did, clearly. I know how cross people are out there, but there's a human story at the heart of this too.
I don't think it's cross. I just think perhaps in our naivety, we expect more of our elected representatives. They're very highly paid. They're in positions of great responsibility. You would think that their moral code is higher than the rest of us, at least you would hope so. Yeah. And Chris, I say to you again, I say to my own children who are 10 and 14, never, ever, ever put a compromising image of yourself anywhere on the internet. Surely they should know better.
2 MPs replied to the messages that William Ragg helped get to them with images themselves, which are compromising. So 2 people, wasn't just William Ragg here, it was 2 other MPs fired back some pictures which were pretty shocking by all accounts. Why did that happen? Why do people feel they can do that to a stranger? Looking at those screen grabs there, it said how the message came from Charlie or Abby. This person is not in your contacts, it said there, not in a group of any group you know. Clearly, no one you know is sending it. So why are you responding with this? I think it's hard to understand why it happens. They're a long way from home. men often on their own in the week, you know, they're doing the wrong thing. I mean, yeah, I mean, rightly so. Why is that happening? I mean, you know, they are getting support here from the House of Commons. It's made very clear by Lindsay Hoyle. Please do avail yourself of the services we have to keep you safe online, and perhaps they should be.
Do you think that there's a case of double standards here? I mean, I was saying we expect more of our parliamentarians, but it seems when they do things where they go askew, as it were, they then get the full arm around them and
not
protected.
Always. Yeah, Jeremy Hunt said, he's the Chancellor, he said it's a courageous and fulsome apology, let's leave him alone. Perhaps aware of the mental health issues that we've talked about on air before with William Ragg, with Gloria De Piero, our colleague, and also he's been very open about the issues he's had. But the Labour is saying, well, you know, should he lose his whip? Not sure.
OK, Chris, thank you very much, but we have to cross back now to that pro-Palestine and pro-Israel demonstrations and speak to our reporter, Charlie Peters. Charlie, what's the latest?
Well, we're just here as the crowds continue to pass towards Downing Street, and we've just seen a placard that says resistance by any means necessary, and other similar gestures and statements being made as these groups pass through Parliament Square on the way towards Whitehall, where there will be speeches outside Downing Street. The sign there, resistance by any means necessary, and a hashtag boycott apartheid. Photos there, I think, of Malcolm X with a AK-47 and automatic rifle shown alongside him. We've also seen some very violent gestures from both sides here on this protest, some extremely strong language and accusations being made by both sides as they march towards Downing Street, where those speeches will be taking place. Also, in the last 5 minutes, we did see someone get arrested on Parliament Square. One of the pro-Israeli demonstrators was cuffed and led away from the square towards the vans here. When we spoke to those around him, they said he'd been arrested for threatening violence and the gestures he was making. Those around him contested that he should be arrested. As this protest continues now, we're seeing many signs saying we demand justice. I mean, we've also seen a significantly large placard of Khomeini, the supreme leader of Iran from 1979, when the Islamic Revolution took place in Iran. That led to the formation of the Quds Day marches, which we're seeing today. They started in '79 after the Iranian Revolution took place. The Community Security Trust, a charity that deals in anti-Semitism, says that these marches are born out of Iran, and the Jewish Board of Deputies has said that they are Iran-backed hate marches. Now, the Islamic Human Rights Commission, the key group that is organizing this march, says that it's a collection of Jews, Christians and Muslims marching against Zionism and in favor of Palestine.
Charlie, for those who don't know that area, the entrance to Downing Street is very near the cenotaph. Of course, the cenotaph is the most sacred war memorial in the land. Are the police forming a cordon around that? Because, of course, we've seen these monuments specifically targeted in the past, which has caused certain chagrin to the British public.
I've just moved around to take a look for you, Mods, and it does appear there is significant barriers put up in place around the cenotaph. I'm also stood now by the Churchill statue, which does have barriers put around it as well. There's a police car right in the middle of Whitehall with lights blazing, and three vans of the Tactical Support Group, which is the Met Police's counter-protest organisation, the Special Task Force here. So it is a significant presence of police officers, over 500 deployed by the Met. They announced that just a few hours before this march took place, with the Home Office urging the Met to take no tolerance towards any unlawful activity. Chanting here, saying terrorist supporters off our streets. One man wearing a hoodie that says, "Please do not arrest me," potentially in reference to some of the pro-Israel demonstrators we've seen arrested and taken away from pro-Palestinian protesters, then to be de-arrested by the Met. We have seen a man who held up a sign at some of these protests in the last couple of Saturdays which said Hamas are terrorists. He was arrested reportedly due to public order concerns. In effect, his sign could have riled up more people in the crowd. Lots of children here as well at this protest, families, people of all ages, over 1,000 here. And we can see in the distance a big panel here. Al-Quds Day is a universal day to support the oppressed against the oppressor. That's a quote from Khomeini, the supreme leader of Iran. Back to you, Martin.
Thank you, Charlie Peters, live from Parliament Square, and of course cross back throughout the show to cover more developments. Placards there saying UK and Israel partners in war crimes, resistance by any means necessary. Picture of Malcolm X with an AK-47 earlier outside the Home Office, an individual intercepted with Adolf Hitler placards in the back of a car that said the irony of becoming what you once hated. We'll have all the latest on that story throughout the rest of the show. Now, it's our biggest giveaway of the year so far, and your chance to win a 10 grand Greek cruise for two, £10,000 in tax-free cold hard cash, and a whole host of luxury travel gifts on top. Yes, your 2025 holiday could be on us here at GB News, and here's all the details you need to get on board.
You could win our biggest prize giveaway so far. First, there's an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. Plus, courtesy of Variety Cruises, a bespoke 7-night small boat cruise for two worth £10,000. With flights, meals, excursions and drinks included, your next holiday could be on us. Choose any one of their 2025 Greek adventures and find your home at sea. We'll also send you packing with these luxury travel gifts. For a chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 26th of April. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Get stuck in now. Coming up, a mother says she found out about her daughter's gender change at a parent-teacher event. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm John Vincent. Queues on the M60 clockwise in Manchester. There's a lane closed for an accident between junction 15, the Swinton interchange, and 16 for Pendlebury. Queues on the M6 toll northbound in Staffordshire is partially blocked for an accident at the toll booths. And on the M6 southbound in Cheshire, we've got two lanes closed for a broken down vehicle causing queues. That's between junction 17, Sandbach, and 16 for Stoke-on-Trent. Queuing traffic on the M1 southbound in Bedfordshire is all due to roadworks around junction 11, Dunstable South. Slow on the M11 southbound in Essex. There's an accident at junction 9, Saffron Walden, although all lanes have reopened. Queuing traffic on the M1 northbound in Northamptonshire. That's due to a broken down vehicle at junction 18 for Rugby. And we're seeing slow traffic on the M4 westbound in South Wales up towards the Bringlass tunnels at Newport. And that's the latest travel news.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Do you mind if I ask you a little bit about Sebastian? It really amazes me how a mother who can lose a child in such a shocking and unexpected way, so little, so precious, can then turn that grief into something so positive. How did you find the strength to get up, get a camera crew, as you say, travel to the other side of the world and investigate all of this?
I was angry at Sebastian for dying. You feel like saying, God, 32 years later, and I can still get very, very upset about it. I was angry that something that while he was born and lived with me and slept and then died, they were actively campaigning in New Zealand to try and stop this happening because they had a very high cot death rate there. They had the lady, the Anne Diamond, if you like, of New Zealand, a television presenter called Judy Bailey, went on telly every night and said, if you're just about to put your baby down to sleep, put him on his or her back, not the tummy, and this will help. And there, cot death rate plummeted. And I went out to New Zealand and met her, and it was anger that drove me to come back and demand that we have the same advert here, the same campaign. And of course, I got all this complete nonsense from the Department of Health saying, oh, young mothers do not watch television, I was told. In other words, while New Zealand mums were being told how to save their babies' lives, we actively denied British mums that advice during the time that Sebastian and others were dying.
And the other point, I suppose, to make is it's helpful to educate all generations, because when I had my babies, my mum would say, he's not settling, just stick him on his tummy, he'll be much happier. That's what we did with you. And we had to say, well, things have changed, and, but it's about educating everybody, because it's not just the mums that get their hands on the babies.
Welcome back, it's 5:24. I'm Martin Daubney and this is GB News. Now let's get back now to that pro-Palestine and pro-Israel demonstrations outside Parliament and speak to our reporter, Charlie Peters. Charlie, what's the latest?
It's coming to the end of the march past Parliament Square here now. The Quds Day protest, the pro-Palestinian group now entering Whitehall, the bulk of them approaching the Cenotaph as they go towards Downing Street here to begin the speeches. You can see this space totally shut off, the entire street here totally cleared as the police monitor this group going through now. It has been a tense and heated atmosphere for the last couple of hours here at Parliament Square and down towards the Home Office where this march started. We have seen very strong language being used by both sides, gestures and slurs. This has been an extremely tense moment. This has been a moment lacking in calm, for sure, with violent language being used by both sides. We saw a man arrested earlier on the pro-Israel side, reportedly for inciting violence. We've also seen photos of Adolf Hitler in a back of a car from the pro-Palestinian side. Some of the gestures being shown towards both sides, extreme language being used. One of the pro-Israeli chants of terrorist and terrorist towards the pro-Palestinian group. At the same time, we have seen placards from the pro-Palestinians saying that they support resistance by any means necessary. When I spoke to protesters earlier and asked them to condemn Hamas, some of them would not. An intense moment here as the police lead someone away that does demonstrate the level of tension that has been constant throughout this march.
OK, thank you, Charlie Peters, live from the pro-Palestine and pro-Israel protests at Parliament Square. And you make sure you stay safe out there, mate. Thanks for giving us that update. Now, moving on, a mother has alleged that she discovered at a parents-teacher meeting that her daughter now defines as a man. And the mother says the school has started using male pronouns to refer to the 13-year-old without even telling her. And it comes as a survey of equality and trans policies at more than 600 schools in Devon and Cornwall showed a large majority reportedly misrepresented equality laws. Some of the school policies reportedly claim children as young as 5 could show signs of gender dysphoria. Well, joining me now is the executive head at St Thomas the Apostle School, and that's Serge Seafy. Welcome to the show, Serge. Thank you for joining us. What do you make of this situation that, despite the current equality laws, which prohibits this kind of thing happening, it's clearly happening in this report in over 70% of schools in Devon and Cornwall?
Surely enough is enough now. I mean, I'm appalled. If this is true, you use the word alleged. If this is true, this is a betrayal of trust. I'm 45 years in this business, 20 years as a head. And I've always told the teachers, when you know more about a child than the parents do, worry a little bit. The only exception to that is if the parents themselves, are perhaps being accused of endangering the child themselves. Other than that, it's supposed to be a partnership. You're bringing up children. But I think it goes beyond that now. I'm sick to death of these stories. I find them embarrassing, and where's Ofsted? And forget these guidelines. Let's make it law. I mean, these children aren't just bringing up this stuff themselves. They don't present and say to these adults, I'm in the wrong body. OK, social media, I'll accept. They're looking at things they shouldn't do. But we mustn't encourage this. It's dangerous. It's wrong. And how many more times do I have to listen to this? And I'm sure you get even more than me, before we finally say enough is enough. Is this recruitment? Is this grooming? We will look back in 10 years' time and think maybe this is another Jimmy Savile moment. How on earth are we allowed this to happen?
Hang on. So you need to be very careful when we use words like grooming. It's a very, very loaded term. Let's try and keep calm about this. I also want to say that my missus is a teacher. This happens a lot in schools. A lot of teachers find themselves in very, very difficult circumstances now where children present to them believing they have gender dysphoria. And if they are genuinely afraid that the parents may take a negative view, and often, don't forget, parents know, teachers know parents very, very well, they themselves are in a difficult situation.
But Martin, have you forgotten about, collectively, I'm sure you haven't, have we all forgotten about puberty and adolescence and the confusion that arises? And therefore, the first people you're supposed to tell, if children present with any kind of difficulties, are indeed the parents. So I'm sorry, I trump everything you just said. I don't care what's going on. There's only one exception, which I've already mentioned. Anything else, if a child is troubled, you get involved with the parents. You start talking to the parents carefully. You're very kind about it. Let's work it out. Let's talk it through. I've had a couple of incidents myself. But what you don't do, and again, maybe you won't like the word pandering to it, okay? You don't pander to it. Children will make mistakes. They will get confused, but you work it through together. I've always tried really hard to make sure myself and my staff work with parents to bring up children, which is difficult enough.
OK, thank you. Very strong views, passionate views there. And that's the executive head at St Thomas the Apostle School, Serge Seafy. Thank you very much for joining us on the show on GB News this afternoon. Now, there's lots more still to come between now and 6 o'clock, and I'll be telling you how, despite his cancer diagnosis, the King is reportedly planning on a 2-week visit to Australia as planned. But first, it's time for your latest news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Martin, thank you. The top stories. Tensions are rising in Westminster, where huge crowds are taking part in a pro-Palestinian protest. The Al-Quds Day march began at the Home Office, with hundreds of demonstrators making their way towards Downing Street. These are now live pictures coming from Westminster. Pro-Israel counter-protesters are nearby, waving flags on Parliament Square, chanting for the release of the hostages being held by Hamas. The Met Police says it planned to deploy more than 500 police officers who would take action if protesters fly the flag of prescribed groups or use any hate speech. Police are searching for body parts after a torso was discovered wrapped in plastic at a Salford nature reserve. Greater Manchester Police says the human remains were found by a member of the public at Kersal Dale. The gender and age of the person are currently unknown, but police believe it was an adult. A murder investigation is now underway and a search is taking place in the local area. Government security experts have been called in to analyse WhatsApp messages at the heart of the Westminster sex scandal. So far, around a dozen MPs, staff and journalists are known to have been targeted, and sources have told GB News more are coming forward. It's after Tory MP William Bragg told The Times he'd sent intimate pictures of himself to someone on a gay dating app and was then manipulated into providing the contacts. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
For a valuable legacy your family can own, gold coins will always shine bright. Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2631 and 1.1651 euros. The price of gold is £1,839 and 23 pence per ounce, and the FTSE 100 closed at 7,911 points.
Rosalind Gold proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Thank you, Tatiana. Well, throughout the show, you've been sending your emails in. gbviews@gbnews.com, of course, is the email address. And since we did the pictures from Parliament Square, absolutely hundreds of you have been mailing in about the protests there. I'll quickly do one. It's from Margaret. Margaret says this: if the people on the pro-Palestine march feel that strongly about the situation, then why don't they go to Palestine and help the locals there instead of causing this constant unrest on the streets in the UK? Well, I'm joined now by Nana Akua, who's in for Michelle Dewberry on Jubes & Co this evening, 6 till 7. Nana, what's on your menu?
Well, of course, there's the big story of the day, William Wagg. The Chancellor has actually praised him for apologising. If we all know what's happened there, we'll talk more in detail about that. And civil servants have been offered help and given trigger warnings for, well, you guessed it, if they see something that upsets them, like any references to slavery. I mean, I don't know what's happening in this world and why this becomes a big deal for people who are triggered by something that may have happened many, many years ago or did happen. But the civil servants are getting all sorts of training, which I find ridiculous. They're also determining policy as to whether they will actually work if the government want to continue to supply arms to Israel. So we were looking at that. Plus, if your partner was, say, a Conservative and you were, say, a Labour supporter, could you actually go out with them? Could you handle going out with somebody with completely different political views to you? Would you even date someone like that? And what are your views on single-sex clubs? Of course, the Garrick Club, very famous in London, is now potentially properly admitting women, although somewhere in the literature they were able to anyway. But we'll be talking all about that as well. So join me at 6.
A feisty menu, as ever. Nana Akua giving it both barrels, as ever. 6 till 7, Nana in for Jubes & Go. Looks superb. Now, a new study has found that uniting Ireland could cost Dublin more than £17 billion every year for 20 years. We'll be discussing that after this. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. Well, Storm Kathleen is on the way for this weekend, but it will be turning much warmer than it has been lately. The winds will also pick up. Here is Storm Kathleen developing out to the west of the UK. Ahead of that, we have got a weather front across northern areas. That's brought some snow earlier today. That's much turning to rain now as the temperatures start to pick up through the rest of the evening. Temperatures will rise as well from the southwest through the night, so it's going to be a very mild night, but there will be some very heavy rain for parts of Northern Ireland, much of Scotland as well for a time. Much of the rain should clear through by tomorrow morning, though, to leave a fairly dry start for the bulk of England and Wales. And as I said, it will be a very mild start to the day. Those temperatures are closer to the daytime average for this time of year. Throughout the day, across eastern areas of England, southeastern areas of Scotland, it should stay largely dry through the day. But Storm Kathleen is developing. It will push up to the west of the UK. There are wind warnings in force. There's likely to be some delays to travel across western areas of England, Wales and Scotland, as well as Northern Ireland, some large waves as well. But in the east, where it stays fairly dry, there'll be highs of 22 degrees. Sunday's going to be another fairly mild day, but it will be more in the way of showers, particularly across western areas, Wales, northwestern England in particular, seeing some of those heavier showers, and it's going to stay windy in the far north. Next week, it does look like it's going to turn a little bit drier across southern areas. However, temperatures will fall a little more closer to average.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 5:39. I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News. We're on the final furlong now. After becoming the largest party in the Northern Ireland Assembly last year, Sinn Féin has called for votes on a united Ireland by 2030. However, would reunification be financially viable for the Irish government? Well, a new study has suggested that a united Ireland would cost Dublin an eye-watering £17 billion every year for 2 decades, leading to a major reduction in Irish living standards due to higher taxes and much lower public spending. Well, joining me now to discuss this is Kevin Moore, who's the author of the book A United Ireland, Why Unification is Inevitable and How It Will Come About. Always a pleasure, Kevin, to speak to you. So, is this an Irish version of Project Fear, or is this merited? An eye-watering, a stratospheric amount of money, Kevin. Where's the truth?
Yes, I think what's happened here is if you get any economists to look at something, they can always come up with wildly different calculations, and of course it depends on what you're measuring. Now, what these 2 economists, very eminent economists, are measuring. They've been making this argument for several years. This is not new. 5 years ago, they said the cost will be 30 billion a year. So it's actually gone down to 20. So perhaps in another 3 or 4 years, it might be down to 10. But what they've done is to agglomerate all kinds of costs and assume that these will be transferred on day one. They've also assumed, I think, in a rather silly way, that there wouldn't be any actual growth and economic synergy between Northern Ireland and the rest of Ireland, which of course there would be. Another report, for example, a few years ago showed that actually within the first 5 or 6 years of Irish unity, it would throw out something in the region of £38 billion worth of extra economic activity. So the devil's in the detail. It always is with any economist report. But what they've basically done, it's a bit like going for a meal and getting the bill at the end and then realising, as well as the food that you've eaten, you're also being charged for the knife and fork and the plate and the tablecloth and the fixtures and fittings. They've piled lots of costs into this calculation and arrived at what is a pretty, as you say, pretty eye-watering figure. But I think, frankly, it doesn't bear an awful lot of scrutiny. There are other economists, there are other political scientists that have looked at the same issue and arrived at figures that are a fraction of this cost, probably somewhere in the region of transitional costs of €2 to €3 billion a year.
All right, Kevin, well, before we get to the bill, what about the notion that this couple even want to sit down for a meal with each other in the first place? Because, of course, reunification would mean a referendum in both countries. How likely is that to happen? You know, your book says unification is inevitable. Do you think that's the case?
I think it was inevitable, frankly, from the moment that we both governments and both peoples signed up to the Good Friday Agreement 25 years ago. That, you know, in the middle of that agreement is the promise of a peaceful transfer of sovereignty of Northern Ireland to United Ireland if it's got the consent, clearly, of the voters, the majority of voters in Northern Ireland and the voters in the South. Now, every poll, and I mean literally every opinion poll of voters in the South show, 2/3 to 3/4 across all demographics, across all age groups, across all parts of Southern Ireland in favour of Irish unity. Now, if you ask them, do you want to pay more tax for it? That figure goes down a bit. But then again, it always does if you ask people if they want to pay more for something. In the North, it's a little bit more different. It's much more finely balanced. But again, when you tot up the combined votes in real elections. So, for example, the 2023 local elections in Northern Ireland, all-out elections, the first time ever, a small majority of the overall vote went to parties, nationalist parties that favour Irish unity. And that's the first time that's happened in 100 years. So you can roll that forwards potentially and say there are demographic changes that are taking place in Northern Ireland. We've seen from the last census there are now more Catholics than Protestants in Northern Ireland. That's not always definitive in terms of what people will do politically, but it's a pretty good guide for the last 100 years of what's likely to happen. So we're starting to see the demography of Northern Ireland change. We're starting to see the electoral performance of Northern Ireland change. And from that comes a judgment a little bit further down the road where the Secretary of State and the British government are going to have to say, we think now that there is sufficient demand to test the constitutional position and call a referendum. If that referendum then says, yes, we want Irish unity, even if it's a bit like Brexit, 52 to 48, a vote is a vote is a vote and a majority wins. And at that point, we then have to get very, very serious about Irish unity. So I think that process, we're on that journey, definitely. It's going to take a few more years yet, but within 5 to 10 years, people have got to get real that this is actually happening.
Well, Kevin, we need to get real about the breakdown of the United Kingdom, because that's what this would signify. A united Ireland would mean smashing apart the United Kingdom in a way that Brexit never did, constitutionally and in terms of sovereignty. It would begin the breakdown of the UK. What next? Well, Ireland has Scotland, Wales and England left on its own. Are we seeing, do you think, Kevin, an inexorable journey towards independence? Or is it just pie in the sky? Is it simply too expensive? Don't forget, the Barnett formula means that Northern Ireland, Wales and Scotland need a much higher rake of the tax cut to even keep their heads above water from Westminster.
They do. I mean, it's very interesting. The debate in Ireland, even today, has been that the Irish government is establishing a sovereign wealth fund, which is obviously something that kind of oil-rich countries tend to do, which means that their corporation tax receipts in Ireland are overflowing at the moment. It's got an economy very much based on big pharma, big tech, lots of American companies headquartered there, working into the single market and what have you. The Irish tax receipts, corporation tax receipts, are overflowing to the degree that Ireland's population is about 13 times smaller than the UK, but in terms of corporation tax is about a quarter of the corporation tax we make in this country. So Ireland is in a very different place than it would have been 30, 40 years ago. Its economic foundations are very, very solid. It's got a young, highly skilled workforce. It's got a very, very dynamic private sector economy. And it is capable of absorbing any residual costs of taking Northern Ireland on. And frankly, Northern Ireland would benefit enormously from being part of the Irish economy.
OK, superb stuff. Kevin Moore, always an absolute joy to talk to you. Have a great weekend. Thank you very much. Now, the King could be preparing for a 2-week state visit in Australia, and just a few months after, of course, that cancer diagnosis. Great news. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Gary King in Essex. The clockwise M25 partly blocked at the moment, got delays building after a breakdown around junction 30 at Lakeside. In Gloucestershire, the northbound M5, there's a lane closed and long delays due to emergency repairs. It's between junction 9 at Tewkesbury and junction 8 at the M50. Delays though back towards junction 11A at Gloucester. In Leicestershire, the northbound M1 looking busy after an earlier accident before junction 23 at Loughborough. Delays going back towards junction 22 at Colville. In Nottinghamshire, the A1M northbound is closed. Long delays due to recovery work after an earlier lorry fire between junction 34 at Blythe and junction 35 at the M18. And in Cheshire, the southbound M6, 2 lanes closed and delays after a breakdown around junction 17 at Sandbach.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
With thanks to Variety Cruises, a family company sailing since 1942, you have the chance to win a £10,000 7-night small boat cruise for two. With flights, meals, excursions and drinks included, you'll be able to choose from any one of their 2025 Greek adventures and explore Greece like never before. Plus, you'll also win £10,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer sizzle. And we'll pack you off with these luxury travel gifts. For a chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 26th of April. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 5:50. We're on the final furlong now. I'm Martin Daubney. This is GB News. Now let's get back now to that pro-Palestine and pro-Israel demonstrations outside Parliament and speak to our reporter, Charlie Peters. Charlie, welcome back to the show. What's the latest on the ground?
Well, we're here now at Whitehall, where the Quds Day March has reached its final position for giving speeches. They're on Whitehall, opposite Downing Street. You can see the crowds gathered in front of me here, and Downing Street is just to my right. And they're directing a message towards Rishi Sunak and the government. This group, organised by the Islamic Human Rights Commission, calling for an end to UK arms, a two-way embargo on arms with Britain and with Israel. Now, in the last hour, we've heard from the Met, the demonstration that took place here. Over 1,000 people marching from the Home Office for 2 hours towards Whitehall. We saw some placards, photos were taken that said resistance by any means necessary. The Met Police said that if these were distributed, they would take action. We saw dozens of these placards in the march as they went across Parliament Square and saw no arrests for those signs. The Home Office said to the Met Police before they deployed 500 officers today that they must take a zero-tolerance approach to law-breaking. We did see 2 arrests. Some pro-Israeli demonstrators have now been arrested on suspicion of calling for violence. But other than that, it was a very tense atmosphere at Parliament Square as the two sides passed each other. A much smaller pro-Israel demonstration drowned out really by the loud voices here from the pro-Palestinian side. They will now deliver their speeches.
Thank you, Charlie Peters, for that report live from Westminster, and make sure you stay safe out there. Now let's end this week with some good news, a positive news story to end. And the King has reportedly told aides to ramp up plans for a 2-week state visit to Australia after a positive start to his cancer treatment. And joining me now for a positive story is the very positive former royal correspondent, Michael Cole. Michael, welcome to the show. What a great end to the week this is. A great, fabulous news story. King Charles doggedly carrying on with those plans. Will he actually make it?
Yeah, good afternoon, Martin. I think the vast majority of Australians will say, good on you, King, and fair dinkum, which is a uniquely Australian expression meaning unquestionably good. And I think I have to salute the King, if I may. It's very gutsy, I think, this tenacity and devotion to duty. And when we saw him on Easter Sunday, there he is, having just come out of St George's Chapel. He really enjoyed it, and he was full of bonhomie. And I've watched him many, many, many times over many years, but I never, ever remember him going along a line and shaking every single hand. I think he was very pleased to be back in the swing of it. It's not every 75-year-old who wants to spend nearly 24 hours in a pressurized cigar tube flying to Australia. And certainly the lady behind the king there, Queen Camilla, does not like long-haul flights, particularly difficult for him when he's undergoing chemotherapy. But I admire his guts. He was smiling like I've rarely seen him smile before. He obviously feels the treatment is going well. And it's not just Australia, Martin, it's New Zealand as well. And then he will go on to Samoa in the South Pacific for the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, which happens every 2 years. And you may remember back in 2018, Her Majesty the Queen, the late Queen, lobbied very hard for him to be made head of the Commonwealth, and that did come to pass. I mean, the Commonwealth is important, was very important to the Queen. It wasn't just a nice place to go in the wintertime where it was sunny. She really believed in the values of the Commonwealth, and as indeed so do I. And I know the King is a big supporter. So he will be going to Samoa and taking his place rightly at the head of the Commonwealth. So big times ahead, a very interesting time in Australia too, with the coming appointment of a new Governor-General, a woman called Sam Mostyn, who is Republican by her sentiments. But the King will get on perfectly well with her, and it will be, I already predict, a great success.
Superb. Well, Michael Cole, I have to say good day to you, mate. Thank you very much for joining us. Always an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Now, I'll be back on Monday, 3 till 6. After this, it's Nana Akua standing in for Michelle Durby. Have a fantastic weekend. See you Monday. First, it's time for your weather with Annie Shuttleworth.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. Well, Storm Kathleen is on the way for this weekend, but it will be turning much warmer than it has been lately. The winds will also pick up. Here is Storm Kathleen developing out to the west of the UK. Ahead of that, we have got a weather front across northern areas. That's brought some snow earlier today. That's much turning to rain now as the temperatures start to pick up through the rest of the evening. Temperatures will rise as well from the southwest through the night, so it's going to be a very mild night, but there will be some very heavy rain for parts of Northern Ireland, much of Scotland as well for a time. Much of the rain should clear through by tomorrow morning, though, to leave a fairly dry start for the bulk of England and Wales. And as I said, it will be a very mild start to the day. Those temperatures are closer